News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The Labor Department says consumer prices didn't rise quite as fast last month. They were up 7.1% over what they were a year ago. But President Biden says that was still less than the pace recorded in October.
We learned last month the inflation rate came down more than experts expected. In a world where inflation is rising at double digits in many major economies around the world, inflation is coming down in America.
Policymakers for the Federal Reserve will take this into account. They're holding their final meeting of the year. They're expected to increase interest rates. The U.S. government has charged disgraced cryptocurrency magnate Sam Bankman-Fried with 8 counts of fraud and conspiracy. The indictment against the founder of the FTX exchange was unsealed this morning in the Southern District Court of New York. NPR's Alina Selyuk reports.
The criminal complaint charges Sam Bankman-Fried with wire fraud and several conspiracy counts alleging money laundering and violating campaign finance laws. Bankman-Fried was arrested Monday night at his home in the Bahamas. He could be extradited to the U.S. He's facing additional charges by U.S. financial regulators, Wall Street's top cop, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. Prosecutors allege Bankman-Fried misled both investors and customers of FTX and used customer money for his own investments, including real estate, and for political donations. Alina Selyuk, NPR News.
Scientists from the U.S. Energy Department have announced a breakthrough. They say for the first time, researchers in a lab were able to generate more energy from fusion than they used to actually start the process. The generation amount was small, but researchers say that one day fusion energy could produce clean, safe electricity without greenhouse gas emissions. However, that day is likely decades away. In California, most of the estimated 270,000 janitors work in the private sector. A study published this week finds their median wages are well below the $15 minimum wage state law requires. From member station KQED, Farida Jabala Romero has more.
The study analyzed government data to find the median wage for janitors statewide is just $13.51 per hour, less than California's minimum wage. Yardina Aaron directs the nonprofit Maintenance Cooperation Trust Fund, which co-authored the report with the UCLA Labor Center.
When you layer in all of the ways that wage theft shows itself for contractors who are undercutting the industry by not paying minimum wage, not only are they making it more difficult for responsible employers to compete, they're also straining the social safety net.
The study also found that nearly half of janitors with children live in poverty and rely more frequently on safety net programs. For NPR News, I'm Farida Jabala Romero in Oakland.
On Wall Street, the Dow is up 242 points. The Nasdaq is up 235. This is NPR News.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro in Brookline today. Police in Plymouth are pursuing charges against the chairman of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe and a second Mashpee resident in the alleged theft of 4 items from the Wampanoag home site at the Plymouth Patuxent Museums. GBH Radio's Jeanette Barnes explains.
The museum says 2 black bearskins and 2 bulrush mats were stolen in early November from inside a Wampanoag home at historic Patuxent. Based on surveillance video, police believe Philip Hicks Jr. and Mashpee Tribe Chairman Brian Whedon were 2 of the 4 people involved. Whedon later aided in the return of the missing items via shipping to Plymouth police. But according to police, Whedon says he was not involved in their removal. Whedon, Hicks, and their attorneys could not be reached for comment. The 2 men are scheduled to be arraigned January 5th in Plymouth District Court. The incident comes at a time when some members of the Wampanoag community have publicly criticized the museum for its representation of Native history. Jeanette Barnes, GBH News 89.7.
Gas prices in Massachusetts have dropped to the level they were before Russia invaded Ukraine in late February. According to AAA Northeast, the price of regular served gas now averaging $3.54 a gallon. That's down 12 cents from a week ago. It's the biggest weekly drop since a 12-cent fall for 2 straight weeks in mid-September. AAA also says prices in the Bay State have decreased 4 straight weeks in a row, falling a dime last week and 31 cents from overall from $3.81. It's 34 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from DuckDuckGo, a company committed to making privacy online simple. DuckDuckGo's app includes a private search engine, web browser, and email protection with one download. More at DuckDuckGo.com.
Boston Public Radio. I am Jim Browdy. I think I'm mic'd. Jared Bowen is in for Marjorie. I'll explain that in a couple of minutes. How are you, Jared, by the way?
I am well. It's great to be with you again.
Nice to see you. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Mayor Wu will be here for an hour of Ask the Mayor at 12:30. And next Tuesday, a week from today at noon, Governor-elect Healy will do her first Ask the Governor-elect. She'll be at the library with us noon next week. Our number is 877-301-8970 to call or text. COVID cases are up nationally. I'm sure you know this. 56% in the last 2 weeks. The CDC is urging a return to masking as the so-called triple-demic surges: COVID, the flu, and RSV. And by the way, Marjorie is not here because after 2.5 years of staying healthy, she tested positive just yesterday for COVID. She's doing pretty well, by the way. Not feeling great, sort of fluish, but we'll wish her well. So how are you reacting? Not to Marjorie getting COVID, but to the whole spread. Are you preemptively putting the mask back on in the days before Christmas, Hanukkah, end-of-year family gatherings, office parties? Or are you totally sick of the precautions? After 2+ years of limiting get-togethers and hiding your face from loved ones, even if you're the most science adherent, as I am, is it going to be harder this time around to go back to all those restrictions? Again, the number is 877-301-8970. I'm sure you saw, Jared, that Los Angeles and New York City are urging, is the verb, I think, people to wear masks at all indoor kinds of things. And I think it's Los Angeles. I may get it backwards, but one of the two is close to even mandating that they have masks on.
And I was just there, actually. I was there
I
for
forgot.
a few days last week. First of all, I was struck when traveling how few people...
You were in L.A., not New York.
I was in L.A., and I was struck by how few people are wearing masks in airports and other venues like that. A lot of people, I have to say, when I got to L.A., were wearing masks even outside. The great part of L.A. is that you can do outdoor dining, which is fabulous. I did that myself. But yeah, at this moment, the cases, everybody was talking about it there, how significantly cases were up, and so it does seem to be these pockets again. So far, not as much in the Northeast, but New York is pretty close to the Northeast.
Right, and by the way, I think everybody knows who listened to us through the worst of COVID, not that it's gone, because it's still somewhere in the neighborhood of 100,000 deaths a year at the current rate. I was about as compliant with whatever Dr. Fauci said, or Dr. Walensky, anybody. I have to say, I've sort of had enough. I mean, if I was around like a really old person, I'd I'm sure I'd wear a mask, that kind of thing, or any other vulnerable kind of people. But it's sort of like enough already, even though intellectually it is concerning. And they say numbers spiked. I mean, the reason the wastewater information data was up was because of Thanksgiving and gatherings. And I assume there'll be even more gatherings around Christmas and New Year's and that sort of stuff. So numbers are going to go up again. So it really is, it's concerning. And the number is 877-301-8970. Did you say you wore a mask when you're out there, or you didn't?
There at certain points I wore a mask. You know, when I'm on the airplane, you have people streaming by you. It doesn't feel comfortable to not be wearing one. At least I didn't feel comfortable. But I saw a lot of people out there. But I was able to be outdoors a lot, which is, you know, a big difference for me. And I will say here, I have enough people around me at this point who are still concerned. They still want me to test if I'm going to be around them, that I feel I'm in the middle of what you just talked about, and people who are hypervigilant, that I have to at least be somewhat aware. But I've realized that we've all let it go to some degree.
You know, I think you know that we took the whole PR team went to see Ryan Landry, the Gold Dust Orphans, little Christmas tree shop ours on Friday night. By the way, it was even better than we expected. It was not just because Marjorie and I have a cameo, but because it was brilliant, and it's there till the 23rd. You should check it out. Almost nobody. It was a packed room. I'd say, I don't know, 300, 400, 500 people. Nobody had, not nobody, 2 or 3 people had masks on. I didn't even think of it. And a couple of months before, I wouldn't have gone to that kind of venue without wearing a mask. It's sort of like COVID fatigue, even if intellectually maybe it shouldn't be, you know?
Well, I also wonder if a lot of people who've had it at this point just are less concerned and not wearing masks. And I will say, Marjorie, among them, I think 3 people in the last 3 days I'm aware of who never had COVID have now contracted it.
In addition,
just in this last
really?
week. Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, let me say again, for those who are concerned, I can see Marjorie's doing okay. I mean, she sort of feels flu-like, which is sort of how I felt the first couple of rounds of this. But she's taking it easy today, and she may be back as early as tomorrow. Not in person, but via Zoom. Let's start in Rockport. Jim, you're on Boston Public Radio at the Boston Public Library. Welcome, Jim. Hi.
Hi there.
Hi.
I'm not getting too overwhelmed with all this. I mean, all you got to do is wear a mask. Is that too much to ask? I'm one of the few people of my friends and family who have not got COVID. But, you know, I'm 61. I'm retired. So I limit the places I go. And I've gotten back into having my little bottle inside the car when I come out of stores. But and my little granddaughter, she's got RSV. You know, when is America going to get it? All we're asking is a little paper mask over your face. You know, hey, I'm 61. I don't look well. I need
You're
to
still
hide my
61
face,
from
so.
what I understand. But go ahead there, Jim. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. I don't
agree with you.
understand why people won't wear masks, okay? My 88-year-old father came back from Europe 2 months ago with COVID. So,
How's he doing?
Coming in the country.
How's your 88?
Very well.
Good. Wish him the best. Jim,
doing
thanks for the call.
very well.
By the way, I'm guilt-tripped already. We're only 30 seconds into the segment. He said, you know, his point is right. What's the big deal about wearing a mask? And it's true. If it's not about you. We said this about 10,000 times during the worst of the pandemic. It's about protecting other people. What is the big deal?
Well, I thought this was kind of the understanding as we came through the pandemic, as we understood the value of masks, that we wouldn't have to always wear them, that our lives would resume in large measure. But when we're sick or when levels rise, it's time to wear the masks again, because I think we're all reminded how much we enjoyed not having colds or anything else for 2 years while this was all happening.
You know, speaking of sick, you know who was really sick is Elon Musk. Did you see? I mean, I practically idolize Fauci, not only for what he did during the pandemic, but for a life of commitment to public service. Do you see what he said? Was something about my pronouns are prosecute Fauci. What is that? I mean, what is that about?
And he has this major platform in which to spread that and foment it. And
100 million followers,
exactly.
Major. Let's go to Amy in Marblehead. You're on Boston Public Radio. We're talking about, I don't know if I should say the return of COVID, but the return of concern about COVID around the holidays. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Amy.
Hi. Hi there.
Hey.
Second time caller.
Thanks.
I love this show, and thanks for helping me, because I've been trying to figure out what to do tonight for a little birthday gathering. But we've had the same experience that Jim has had. We've had a number of people that I know that have never gotten COVID, now have COVID. It's on the rise. Big time in Marblehead. There just seems to be people all over the place coming down with it. We've canceled out Christmas parties, and I'm starting to wear a mask again, even though I can't stand the idea of it. But you're right, it's just a little piece of paper that might protect us. But we're traveling over the holidays, and I don't really feel like coming down with COVID.
I think all those sentiments are good ones, Amy. And again, I've done a turnaround in about 3 minutes here. 2 callers in a row saying take the precautions. Amy, thanks for the call. Stay safe. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970.
Well, and remember that tests are readily available. A lot of insurance companies, you're allotted a certain amount free of charge. You just order them up at your pharmacy. I picked some up yesterday, coincidentally, at CVS, just to keep well stocked. But they're all easy things to do, to test or to wear a mask. And I think there were even reports last week or 2 weeks ago that maybe you don't even need to wear an N95 or something like that, that some of the basic masks
it's the paper deal.
Just as acceptable.
You know, this is a fairly typical text. I'm trying to scan the text. They're almost all the same. I'm wearing a mask and living my life. This is Martha in Acton. I let my guard down and got COVID the night before Thanksgiving. Wearing a mask is not a big deal. Losing 2 weeks out of your life, or much, much worse, is a big deal. I'm looking around our studio at the library. There are 1, 2, 3, 4. Hello to you 4. All 4 of you are wearing masks. 5, 6, 7 out of the whole crowd wearing masks. That's actually a higher percentage than the other night at the Ryan Landry thing. That's a good thing. 877-301-8970. By the way, this is not intended to be a scare tactic. I would assume the reason the numbers are going up is primarily because people are letting their guard down, kind of thing. It's not like there's another surge kind of thing in terms of the environment. Is there or is there? No.
No, not at this moment. But also, what have we been reading? The holiday parties are back for the first time in 2 years, and people are excited. You know,
Super spreader events.
I keep likening it to I've done a few events. It's like presiding over a dog park, because everyone is so excited to be back together again. Everybody's running up to one another, and there's a lot of excitement because we haven't had this. We know what it's like to have been relatively alone for the last couple of years.
How can you mask at a holiday party, too, when you're drinking and eating, too.
Yeah,
What do you do?
I don't think you mask well, and if you're drinking, I'm sure it doesn't remain on your face for the entire evening.
Where do you want to go next?
Let's go to Sally calling from Concord. Hi, Sally.
Hey, Sally.
Hello.
Hello.
So I'm a 72-year-old person. I managed to not have COVID for 2.5 years. Then I took a couple of plane trips. I flew to Madrid on Iberia, and Iberia still is in the minority, but it has a policy that everybody on the plane has to mask. So I was on the plane for 8 hours, both directions, didn't get COVID. Then I came back and went to visit a family member who has a solid organ transplant living in San Francisco. And we masked with N95s on the plane. We isolated for 3 days after we got where we were going. And then we saw this person. And then my husband got COVID. And so he had to be isolated in a army motel room in San Francisco for a week. And I got back home, and then I got COVID finally. So neither one of us are very sick. One thing I would say is I'd make a plug for Paxlovid for people who are older and who qualify by virtue of being over 65 or having other health issues that give them a reason to be given Paxlovid. I think that there's some bad press and even some physicians who don't understand the value of Paxlovid, but it really cuts down on the possibility of being hospitalized with a serious
It does, but it also, and by the way, Sally, thank you for your call and thank you for your recommendation. Marjorie and I were discussing it actually this morning about Paxlovid. I took it, I got Paxlovid rebound. Sally would say the good news is I got it 2 times in a row. The good news is you didn't go to the hospital, you didn't die. I mean, those are 2 relatively good things.
That's a bonus.
But there is some debate. So I would suggest if you've got COVID, maybe you should talk to your primary care physician and make that kind of thing. Can I also explain something to listeners? I sometimes feel like that they think there's a rule that if you're over 60, you have to announce how old you are when you call the show. It is not a price of admission. It is not required when I say, hi, Sally from Canton, for you to say, hi, I'm Sally, and I'm 72. Or whatever it is. It is not required. You're free to do it.
It's not a badge of honor.
But it is not required that you do it. What's that?
It's not a badge of honor. I made it.
No, you made it. Exactly. And you hope you continue to make it. In any case, 877-301-8970 is the phone number. Catherine from Wellfleet, don't tell us how old you are. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, Catherine.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm from Wellfleet and Hopkinton.
We love Wellfleet. Go ahead.
I started wearing masks and using hand sanitizer and keeping healthy habits. And as I became more aware of what to do and what not to do, I honed in on what Dr. Fauci or whatever health experts recommended. And then I just kept those habits. And I have not stopped, and I have high-risk individuals in my life.
Well, that's a big deal.
So in order to protect them, and then, when I hear people say, I don't want to get COVID, it sounds like they're saying, I don't want to get a head cold. What about the Broadway dancer that lost that leg? What about all those, so many people died? What about long COVID? I personally don't want to lose my leg or have long COVID or these things. And I would feel so guilty if someone in my life caught whatever from me and died or I don't think I could live with myself if I was responsible for someone else losing their leg or whatever, or losing a loved one.
Catherine, you're great.
So what?
No, I mean, that's great. That was perfect. That was a perfect call and a responsible call, and we love Wellfleet. And thank you for calling. By the way, someone just texted a minute ago, and now it's texted twice with no signature. You don't have to, saying masks don't work. Actually, masks do work. So instead of texting us with information that is completely fallacious, why don't you call us at 877-301-8970. We can have a discussion about the value of wearing a mask. 877-301-8970. 8970.
Yeah, we have this texter here saying, after 3 years, I caught COVID, fully vaccinated, boosted, and on Paxlovid, really sick. After being less vigilant, I will wear a mask everywhere. I think that's the other thing. People forget how sick they got. I mean, I was dead tired for about a month after getting it last spring.
Speaking of that, before we take a break, one thing that we try to be as respectful to callers and listeners as possible. We haven't got any text today, but let me try to preclude this. We used to get a lot of text during the worst of COVID from people saying, I'm vaccinated, I'm boosted, whatever, and I still got COVID, shows they don't work. And my response to that is, can you get any dumber? The reality is, it doesn't preclude you from getting it. No. It makes it very unlikely that you're not going to be dead when you text us. So vaccines, by the way, speaking of that, now I'm getting aggravated. Do you know what the numbers are on the most recent booster? Is it called bivalent? Is that the word?
Yeah.
You know what it is
I don't
nationally?
know.
13%.
That's
7 out of 8 people in this country have chosen not to get the most recent booster. I mean, it's pathetic.
Which is inconceivable. You think all that scrambling that everybody did at the beginning. And
do you remember that?
Yeah, I very much remember that. Yeah, I think I was part of the scramble myself.
When Governor Baker was in the other day for his final appearance on the radio, he's going to be with me Thursday night on television, but our final appearance on the radio, we played that infamous sound where he was honest enough to say, because he came in right after I think the website crashed, the vaccine or something like that. Yeah. His hair was on fire. Do you remember those days and how you felt at 3 o'clock in the morning when you actually got an appointment at Gillette, like in 6 weeks?
Because you had set your alarm to wake up in the middle of the night as soon as they
so you could do
on.
it. Yeah. And by the way, now all you have to do is go to your damn CVS or Walgreens and you get the booster, yet 7 out of 8 of you have chosen not to get it, which is totally ridiculous. In any case.
All right, stick around. You're listening to Boston Public Radio. We're going to continue the conversation about COVID cases ticking up very much so in places like LA and New York and what that means for us here in Massachusetts. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
East Boston went from having a park nestled within the heart of the neighborhood to a neighborhood that's now home to one of the country's busiest airports.
The obvious manifestations of going from an Olmsted park to a polluting, noisy airport is as straightforward as you could imagine.
We've got more asthma, respiratory diseases, hearing losses. Why? Because this airport has destroyed it.
I'm Jeremy Siegel, part 2 of our series, The Price of Flight, tomorrow on GBH's Morning Edition.
Support for GBH comes from you and Vantage Healthcare, providing primary care physicians throughout New England. Vantage brings their primary care team on site to assisted living communities, nursing homes, and more. Learn more at myvantagehcs.com. And the Addison Gallery of American Art in Andover, presenting Rosamund Purcell, Nature Stands Aside. The artist's first retrospective shows her career from the 60s to today, now through December 31st. AddisonGallery.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jared Bowen is sitting in for Marjorie because Marjorie has COVID for the first time. She's doing okay. We hope she'll be back, not back in person, but back-ish tomorrow. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Mayor Wu will join us at the library at 12:30 and be with us for an hour to take your calls and questions. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about the return of COVID precautions or whether they should return as the holiday/winter approaches. As Jared and I both said, the numbers are up pretty dramatically in places like LA and New York City, where they are urging people to wear masks. One of those two cities is contemplating mandating masks indoors. We want to know if you're ready for every single caller, and I would say about 90% of the texters are saying, what's the big deal? Just do it. If it keeps you safe, much more importantly, keeps people you care about around you, coworkers, loved ones, older people safe, that sort of thing, just do it kind of deal. 877-301-8970.
Let's go back to our calls, and Barbara calling from Framingham. Hi, Barbara.
Hey, Barbara.
Hi, I love your show.
Thanks.
I'm really sorry I have to call in about this. My husband had a transplanted kidney for 25 years. That was mine. And he ended up with 2 forms of pneumonia. And the medication they gave him injured his kidney. And he's on dialysis for 3 days a week. He has to be extremely careful because he has no immune system. Yeah. And I was at CVS trying to pick up some medication. And a guy came in with no mask, and he looked at me, and he said, "How ridiculous, you're wearing a mask. I don't know why." And I mean, the man was a jerk, so I say anything, but I was so angry. I said, if I don't and I catch it, my husband will die. He has no immune system. Is that enough? And he just walked out. And it was just so silly over a mask. There's nothing wrong with wearing a mask. We haven't been out in 2 years. And it's just really, really hard. But it's better than him dying over something that he doesn't have to. And all I'm saying is to fight over this shows you where we're at as a country. It's ridiculous.
Well, you said it beautifully, Barbara, and we wish your husband good health and all that sort of stuff, and I think you did the right thing. You know, when she mentioned that confrontation, I don't know if it's too strong a word, do you remember that pathetic scene when Governor DeSantis was walking to speak in an event, and there were either high school seniors or college freshmen, young kids, 17, 18-year-olds, standing behind him, because that's what politicians do these days, always have people standing behind him. They were all wearing masks, and he ridiculed them to their face and said, why are you engaging in this public health theater or whatever? I mean, just really, and by the way, embarrassed them in addition to giving bad public health advice. So good for that caller for taking on somebody who's trying to take her on. I mean, shut up. Not her, but him.
It's just amazing to me that people still have the energy to be this angry about something that doesn't even matter to them and ultimately will help them at the end of the day.
Well, because it's political. I mean, it's still a political kind of thing.
As I've shared with you and Marjorie, thinking about theater, I know the theaters around here have struggled whether or not to have mask mandates because people get frustrated if they have to sit in the theater for a couple of hours and wear a mask, and other people won't go back to the theater unless they know that everybody is wearing a mask.
So what are they doing now? They're urging. They're not mandating.
Some
for the most part, right?
Tonight or tomorrow night, I think I'm seeing Life of Pi at the American Repertory Theater. As far as I understand it, they still require masks.
Oh, good.
And so, it's starting to sound like a smarter decision at this point to require that and help fellow theater goers.
Let's go up to New Hampshire. Nancy's on the phone. Hey, Nancy, welcome.
Thank you very much. I am a longtime listener from your previous show, and I'm so sorry to hear that Marjorie has this. I am home for the second week with it. I fought it as hard as I could, fully vaxxed, boosted, in a dental office, so 4 inches away from people's faces. I was so careful. My mantra the last 2 years has been, you can't fix stupid. And I let my guard down. I let my guard down from wearing an N95 to not putting the shield on, and I work with people who are not boosted. One isn't even vaccinated, and I'm angry.
Wait. You have somebody you work with, did you say at a dental office, who's not even vaccinated?
Yes, sir.
And the boss in your office is allowing that person to serve patients?
Nobody's business. It's nobody's business.
Well, I'd say it's everybody's business. That's pretty bad, Nancy, don't you think?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I mean, listen, I've been called a communist for almost 24 years in that office because I agree with the more liberal side of things.
Well, I'd say agreeing with public health recommendations is not exactly radical, but maybe it is in your office. Nancy, feel better, and I hope the head dentist or whoever he or she is gets with the program. Thanks so much for the call. Yeah. That's pretty hard. How'd you feel about going to your dentist and not knowing that the person who's cleaning your teeth or doing your crown or whatever those things are called is not even vaccinated?
Yeah, I wouldn't enjoy that. My dentist, they were all like in hazmat suits.
Me too. That is totally true.
And 3 layers of masks and plastic, but I felt safer. It wasn't too scared as that mask and sort of hazmat suit comes leaning down over me.
You know, of all the embarrassing things I've done in my life, the one that sticks with me most recently, which I can't believe I was dumb enough to admit to on the air, I was getting one of my millions of tests, whatever. I get a lot of health tests.
Do you? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Yes, I do. And I don't know if you heard the story. Maybe Marjorie forced me to tell it. I can't remember because I stupidly told her. But this woman who was the tech, who I'm pretty sure has done a test on me like every year on something. No, it wasn't. It was somebody new. And I stupidly, and talk about arrogantly, I don't know why I'm bringing it up again.
I'm really enjoying this, by the way.
I said something about, let's pull down our masks so we can just see each other's faces and put it back up so, sort of to say hello. And I'm like embarrassed as I'm even saying the words. And obviously I put her in a position where she had no choice whether she wanted to or not. How pathetic is that?
That's pretty pathetic.
Maybe I didn't do that. 877, no, actually.
I think you did.
Oh, my
I think
God.
I'm going to text Marjorie about it.
No, she knows
hear
quite
the
well.
Unfiltered version of it.
Denny in Providence. Wow, that's horrible. Denny in Providence, what's up with you?
Hi, Denny.
Hey guys.
Hey.
I'm kind of shocked that nobody has even mentioned the word long COVID.
Yeah.
In respect to the recent, and it's unbelievable because I mean, just look up almost weekly in the New York Times. There's new data and studies coming out. Harvard just started a center to study long COVID and is looking to increase that. Biden administration just put $1 billion towards it. Most of us, I had a mild case of COVID in mid-June, Omicron, fully vaccinated, all that stuff, no problem. Come September, I can barely, get through the day with huge waves of fatigue, brain fog. Another nurse friend of mine, she got COVID 2 years ago, and she gets violent headaches, almost daily. The studies out of Europe and now the studies coming from America are pointing to at least 50% of COVID, positive COVID cases sometime later, 2 months, 3 months, develop, these symptoms and they don't go away. So my concern is not that we've got new waves of COVID coming. It's the long COVID that isn't being addressed, on this show even today. So
I'm glad you brought it up.
Going on.
We should have brought it up. We did. I don't know if I haven't heard a number nearly as high as 50%, but there's a lot of it, and it's a real serious problem, and we were remiss not to mention it, so we're glad you did, Denny. You know what we're also remiss not mentioning? The fabulous Twitter account that Alex Goldstein put together, Faces of COVID, which memorializes people who died, and they're still dying. I mean, the numbers are still, if you check out the New York Times, which I do every morning, at least their numbers, in the neighborhood of 300 a day, which I'll do the math for you, is 100,000 a year. And so while the numbers are lower, and they're mostly older people, and they still not to the same degree used to be are unvaccinated, it's still a lot of people. And a lot of people, when you see their faces and hear their story, it makes it much more real than the numbers. So Alex has done actually a wonderful thing and made a wonderful contribution. So this is depressing me. Let's move on. Okay, is that fair enough?
All right, okay.
By the way, wear a mask. I've been turned around in 30 minutes. Wear a mask.
Yep. Coming up next, it's On the Docket with retired federal judge Nancy Gertner. We'll discuss the need for reforms, ethical and otherwise, at the Supreme Court. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Parisians have embraced e-bikes and scooters. Some 400,000 rides are taken through the city every month. A quick way to zip around, but with a serious downside.
It's very dangerous. There are a lot of accidents. In Paris, it's like the bordel, we said.
Bordel, a big mess. The city says rental companies need to improve safety or face an all-out ban on e-bikes and scooters. It's on the world.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and the Corcoran and Haviland Insurance Group, an independent insurance agency providing risk management and insurance protection to families and businesses throughout Massachusetts. Learn more at chinsurance.com. And Chevalier Theatre in Medford Square, presenting Il Divo, a New Day tour, with guest vocalist Stephen Labrie, March 1st at 8 p.m. Tickets and more information are available at chevaliertheatre.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Jared Bowen's in for Marjorie, who who, if you've been listening, has COVID. We hope she's going to be back tomorrow, not in person, but via Zoom. We'll let you know a little bit later. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The mayor will join us in 55 minutes, Mayor Wu, and she'll be here for an hour to take your questions. But in the interim, we're joined now for another edition of On the Docket by Nancy Gertner. She's a retired federal judge, senior lecturer at Harvard Law School, and a BPR contributor. Judge Gertner, good to see you as always.
Good to be on.
It's great to see you. So you and Larry Tribe were both on Jim's show last night. You were talking about the newly appointed special counsel, Jack Smith, and your sense that he could be zeroing in on indictments for the former president. What makes you think so?
Well, it's interesting when the special master is appointed really on an established investigation, as opposed to Mueller, who was appointed at the beginning of the investigation. You get a sense that he should build on what they've already done, and that he's mostly sort of assembling and making the final decision. In addition, so there's the timing of the special master appointment. Garland said it was because Trump had announced he was going to run, but it's actually very interesting to do it at the tail end of an investigation or even mid-investigation. The other thing is, if they're going to bring indictments, it has to be now, or it has to be by January.
Why?
Because the timing of a criminal case, particularly one against Trump, given the way he has litigated everything, he will litigate the size of the courtroom. He'll litigate everything, and they don't want to be up close and personal with the 2024 election. So I think you're talking January.
So you think the special counsel, when did he take over? In November? I think he's still in Europe. I'm not sure if he's even back because he broke his leg cycling or something.
Right.
He takes over in November, and within 60 days, he's going to indict a former president of the United States?
Because it's not like he's starting from scratch. He has a team, he has a staff. He already argued, or at least participated in the argument before the 11th Circuit, the appeal from Eileen Cannon, the judge in Palm Beach.
The Trump judge overruled by two Trump appellate judges.
Right. So, I think that it's not like he's starting from scratch. Mueller literally had to assemble a team and begin an investigation. He's further down the line. In addition, January 6th is going on. The January 6th committee is going on, and so there have been issues about what they share. So this is not an undeveloped investigation, is all that I'm saying. This is a well-developed investigation.
And
I'm sorry. No, you go ahead.
Just clarify more. It's my understanding, too, that he has more latitude, more resources, if you're going back and comparing this to the Mueller investigation?
Oh, he has the full resources of the Department of Justice. Mueller had, very limited amount. So he has essentially whatever the subpoenas have produced, whatever the grand jury process has produced, he will have some stuff from January 6th. That's a question of negotiation as between the two. So he may well be the prosecutor that is evaluating whether to go forward with an indictment, as opposed to the prosecutor that is assembling the information.
You mentioned January 6th. The January 6th committee met in behind closed doors on Sunday to discuss recommendations by 4 of the members about whether or not there should be criminal referrals. We have all learned that criminal referrals from Congress don't have any legal standing, as evidenced by the contempt of Congress things, some of which were prosecuted by the Department of Justice, some of which were not. So assuming they don't have any legal standing, legal consequence, why do you think it matters that they do issue criminal? By the way, it's supposed to happen on December 21st is the tentative date.
It's interesting. Larry Tribe and I were on your TV show
I was there
last
for
night.
that, actually, yes.
Good. And Larry Tribe was saying that they will be careful and, as to whom they pick, and it won't be sort of a blunderbuss. And I think that that's true, but I think that they will be attentive to the fact that anyone they don't refer for criminal prosecution will go screaming around the country saying, I'm exonerated. That's right. So what does that mean? I think there'll be substantial pressure to refer Trump for criminal investigation, because otherwise he will tweet that he has been cleared.
Well, speaking of individuals who were not named in a referral, even though it's non-binding, claiming exoneration. One of the things I didn't think, I don't know if you and Larry Tribe were on my television show last night.
Yes, is that right? I was there.
Yeah, you were there for that too? Okay, fine. One of the things I didn't think to ask you last night, but based on what you said, I asked now, is there are 2 parallel tracks that Jack Smith is investigating. One is the Mar-a-Lago related things in the documents, and one is the insurrectionist activity. So for the same reason that a failure, will he try to do both at one time? Meaning if there are indictments, and if there are to be indictments on both fronts, would they likely be announced simultaneously?
Well, it's hard to know because they're actually, it's not like they're related.
Right.
Unless they found something at Mar-a-Lago that actually, relates to the insurrection. But the Mar-a-Lago stuff is really very straightforward. There is really very straightforward. You had documents you shouldn't have had. The only issue is an issue we've talked about here sort of generally about where they bring the charges. It looks pretty clear that the government believes that the places for the charges should be the District of Columbia.
Why do we care about that? Who cares where the charges are
Well, it depends on who the judge is, right?
Oh,
you go back to Palm Beach and you wind up before Judge Cannon, although I don't think that could happen because I think she's pretty disqualified herself. And clearly the District of Columbia would be a much better venue.
Can I ask one last related question about this, which we also discussed last night and discussed on the air with you, but there's a lot of confusion. I heard Marjorie and Andrea Cabral talking about this on the radio last week. I believe I'm right in saying that if Trump is indicted and convicted of financial fraud, a la the New York City stuff with his company where he hasn't been charged yet, he's indicted and convicted of all kinds of horrible things with the documents in Florida, unless he is indicted and convicted on insurrectionist-related activity, whatever that means. As you said last night, what does that mean exactly? He could be indicted, convicted, and go to jail and still run and serve as the next president of the United States unless the conviction is about insurrectionist activity. Is that correct?
The Constitution talks about the 14th Amendment. This was to deal with Civil War, people on the wrong side of the Civil War, that if they engaged in essentially insurrection against the United States, they couldn't run for office. It doesn't say indicted, convicted. It says engaged in. So presumably a federal court would have to adjudicate whether this person engaged in.
But any other activity that is not insurrectionist,
that's right.
You could serve from jail, theoretically.
That's right. Right. Yeah, no question about that.
We're talking to a retired judge, federal judge, Nancy Gertner.
So moving to the Supreme Court now, where we're learning more and more about, I don't know if compromised is the right word, but there are very significant ethical questions about members of the court, conversations they've had, decisions that we may have been leaked. I say may have because people are questioning the people who say they were leaked to. But one of these individuals is a reverend who is now speaking out about this. His name is Robert Schenck, and he said that he was part of this initiative, this campaign to sway members of the court. Before we ask you about what we're learning from that, let's hear a little bit of him testifying at the House Judiciary Committee hearing last week about this.
Throughout this ordeal, I've had to look deeply at what my cohorts and I did at the Supreme Court. I believe we pushed the boundaries of Christian ethics and compromised the High Court's promise to administer equal justice.
Because he and colleagues were trying to get them to decide cases on their way for abortion, things like same-sex marriage. So what's the significance of this, and do you find his claims valid? Because again, people are questioning this.
There are two kinds of claims he makes. One is that the Hobby Lobby decision was leaked to him, not the full opinion as with Dobbs, but just the underlying, the outcome. I could see that happening. I could see someone saying things are going to go well for you guys. Boom, he knows the outcome. Yeah. So that's one thing. The other thing, though, is the influence campaign that he mounted to influence the justices. And the problem is that these are justices that are amenable to that influence campaign. Where you related to that is the notion that after the abortion decision, 3 of the 4 justices essentially did a victory lap. Went to the Federalist Society, got their applause. So these are justices that are amenable to the perks that the right is bringing. I mean, essentially, come and have dinner with these fancy people. Come and, give us. We're going to send a lot of money to the Supreme Court Historical Society, and in exchange, you give us front row seats. You're really in an area that no one has ever tried before, at least not to this degree. So they're trying to influence the court, and you have justices who appear to be willing to be influenced, or at least the appearance of being willing to be influenced. And that's That's really extraordinary. I mean, I spent 17 years on the bench, we've talked about this before, drawing a circle around my court. And my husband, who was then the legal director of the American Civil Liberties Union, could not come in. I was careful.
He could come in the house. He couldn't come in with the circle.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I mean, we were talking about this the other night. I don't even remember any time that I saw him in my courtroom. He couldn't be on an amicus brief. The ACLU couldn't be involved. I mean, and the last thing I would do is issue a decision and then go around the state saying, "Aren't I wonderful?" And yet so you have a two-way street here. I find this guy Schenck credible only because the leaking of the Hobby Lobby outcome wouldn't have taken much, and the influence campaign we've seen, from both how they were selected and where they have been after this disastrous term.
By the way, speaking of this campaign, we had Sheldon Whitehouse, the senator from Rhode Island, on radio and TV last week, and his new book is called The Scheme, which is about exactly this, the capture of the Supreme Court by dark money, and it's brilliant and important to read. Check it out. I want to stay on Reverend Schenck for a minute. One of his allegations you touched upon was that the Hobby Lobby decision, which, correct me if I'm wrong, that's where it said the contraception provision of the Affordable Care Act does not need to be complied with by a private company if they have religious objections.
Right.
The company has religious
Right.
objections. So Reverend Schenck's contention was, we sent some, I think, woman in to have dinner with Justice Alito, who ended up writing the opinion. Justice Alito leaked the opinion to her. She gave it to me. I then communicated that to the CEO of Hobby Lobby, and that was what the decision was, that it had been leaked. That's one. White House, and I think his name is Hank Johnson, who's his colleague on the Judiciary Committee in the House, write a letter, he tells us, to Chief Justice Roberts, who has done nothing about the Ginny Thomas, Clarence Thomas thing, absolutely nothing, saying we want a full investigation as to whether or not there was this leak, the response to which is a spokesperson for the Supreme Court saying we spoke to Justice Alito, and he said he didn't do it. End of discussion. I mean, this is unbelievable.
We're going to reform the criminal justice system. So the next time you get a speeding ticket, you say to the police officer, "I didn't do it."
That's the end of it. But that is essentially what it is.
It's over. Right.
So is there? I'm almost sick of asking, as much as you're sick of answering the same question. Does a situation like that, forget the lunatics, but sane members of Congress, if that's not oxymoronic, why would there not be some move to force the Supreme Court to create some oversight body, as you've talked about, that can actually rule on their ethics? Somebody I read last night suggested, how about Stephen Breyer, retired Supreme Court Justice from Cambridge, let him be the whatever, the overseer on ethics, because having an ethics set of rules, which they do, but having no enforcement mechanism is ridiculous.
Yes, all true.
Okay, so?
I mean, there are proposals to have retired judges, Souter still here, Breyer still here, be the ones to whom, you would do present a case, and they would determine whether this justice or that justice violated the rules. Then the question is what kind of discipline, and the Constitution only provides, the discipline could be a financial penalty, for example. The discipline could be you can't sit for a certain amount of time. That's not easy to do since it's only a 9-person court. There's a proposal to have the chief justices of different courts, chief judges of different courts sit on review. The difficulty is that we have the most powerful Supreme Court in the world. And the Constitution sort of enabled that. And then the question is, how do you create an enforcement structure that puts somebody above that? Because the enforcers of this have to be able to mete out punishment.
Do you know Roberts?
Met him, but yeah.
Okay, so Chief Justice Roberts, who's the one who's always complaining, don't attack us, we're not a political court, etc. If he was in a candid conversation here, and we said, a variation of what you said about you get a traffic ticket. So the way you do an investigation is you go to the person who is allegedly committed the ethical violation, and he denies it, and that's the end. That's like if a case came before the Supreme Court, and one of the parties said it's not true, and they said, okay, case over. It's so preposterous. It is unbelievable.
It is preposterous, but they have impunity. Roberts has impunity. They all have impunity. They somehow believe that this will blow over. And I think it would have blown over if we hadn't seen the kind of aggressive court that we've seen, if Dobbs had not been leaked. I mean, I think that I keep on using the word impunity. There is nothing that we can do, literally. There was a wonderful Jamel Bowie op-ed which said,
weeks ago, right?
which said that life tenure, whose purpose was to enable judges to vote their conscience and be free of political influence, has led to the opposite, which is these guys have impunity. They can say and do anything, and there are no consequences. Ethical consequences we could actually envision. Congress could do something. It would be litigated from now until tomorrow, the appropriateness of that, just as people challenged Congress passing rules of procedure many, many years ago. So it would be litigated, but they certainly could do that. And as I've said on this program, and Tribe and I have written, they could also expand the court.
We're talking to retired federal judge Nancy Gardner.
And I was just going to ask you about that because of all these conversations, this lack of, it seems, internal policing methods or investigative methods or even adherence to ethics. Where does the momentum now, we've talked to you about this before, for ethical reform or just reform in general in the Supreme Court stand, and that's everything from term limits to age limits to expanding the court?
I think that there is now more move for reform. There's no question about it. When I was on the White House Commission on the Supreme Court, and we issued our opinion, our report about a year ago, and we were alone. I mean, nothing much had happened. I think that after the Dobbs leak, essentially, I like to describe this as a 3-day period when the Supreme Court must have thrown out precedent after precedent, right? First it was the gun case, then it was the abortion case, and then it was the environmental protection case. And now they are reaching for other decisions. One would be Moore v. Harper, which is the case that would basically empower state legislatures to determine, electoral qualifications free from state court review and surely free from federal court review. So, they're reaching for things. I wonder now if people understand exactly how out of control this court is. And now that will precipitate something. The problem is, part of the Supreme Court structure is baked into the Constitution, notably life tenure. Term limits, every other court in the world has term limits. No one has what we have. But that would take a constitutional amendment.
Judge Gardner, you mentioned this Moore case, and Marjorie and I discussed it with you before, but could you explain it in English for a minute here, this independent state legislature theory, and answer a question while you're explaining it? It seems to me if this theory that's before the Supreme Court was the law of the land, as you explain it, that it's at least possible that Donald Trump would be president as we speak.
Yes.
Okay, so explain what it is.
So the Constitution, which was a document that was really intended to deal with a country where many people in the country wanted state autonomy, right? You'd gone from the Articles of Confederation, if anyone remembers that, when it was essentially a confederation and not a country. So the states have the right to, it says state legislators have the right to set qualifications for federal elections. And this was a compromise of the Constitution. Over the past, 200 years, legislature has always meant state constitutions. No legislature anywhere in a republic is empowered to do whatever they wish to do without court review. It's an unheard of concept in a democracy. And so always the state court could say, hey, legislature, what you've done is racist, what you've done is this. Because this Constitution says legislature, the right has tried to then argue that the legislature has the final word. In all of this. The state legislature has the final word with respect to federal elections. If they succeed, there will be rules for state elections and different rules for federal elections. State elections governed by the state constitution. The state courts could look at it. Federal elections, the state legislature would be free to gerrymander so that you are alone in a district and, everybody else is in it. They could do whatever they want.
Well, including, as I suggested a minute ago, let's take Georgia for a second and the infamous 11,000 votes. And it's a Republican legislature. The electors went to Joe Biden because he won the popular vote there. If the legislature says, essentially by majority, no, he didn't,
Right.
Donald Trump won, those 11,000 votes be damned. The electors under this theory would go to Donald Trump.
Right. Or they could say tomorrow, the legislature should pick the electors without regard to what the vote was. So that could be going forward in 2024. There then would be no review of that.
Okay, so the reports I read of this thing suggested, based on oral argument, which I know is really dangerous, that there is reason for sane people to be optimistic. There only seem to be 3 conservatives who seem to have bought into this. But I guess my response to that is, don't you need 4 justices to take a case?
Yes.
So there are at least 4 of them who take this seriously, and all they need is 1 more vote,
That's
right?
That's right. So, I mean, nobody really knows what Robert seems to be against this. Nobody knows what Gorsuch and Barrett positions are. It's Alito and
Kavanaugh.
Thomas.
Whoever it is, they're 2
Alito
conservatives.
and Thomas are clear. And the question was, and Gorsuch, they believe, is leaning to the Alito-Thomas position. So the issue is the middle of this court, God help us, Kavanaugh, Barrett, and Roberts. And the question is whether you can say legislatures have to be subject to state constitutional review, and the federal government will only intervene if the state court goes rogue and does something they shouldn't. So it will be some degree of federal oversight, some degree of state oversight, but to a limited degree.
You know, the problem with this case is it sounds so arcane, I think, to the average person. The consequences of this are colossal.
It's
years in the making as well.
Right, yeah. It's part of what this court has been doing is, we've talked about this before. It's one thing, originalism was originally a way of restricting federal courts from going rogue, right? You could only look at the original intent. You couldn't say there was a living constitution that now covered gay rights and abortion. But this is an aggressive originalism. This originalism says, it's not just tomorrow's decision. I can go back and say, well, you were wrong, and you were wrong, and you were. I can go back to all the past decisions and undo precedent. And that's what those 3 days in June were. Environmental protection restrictions overturned or limited, gun restrictions limited, and then the abortion case. So they are aggressively looking at past precedent, and we've never seen that before. And this is, the independent state legislature view was invented, essentially. No one even imagined this, that a legislature could be free from any constitutional oversight. Is extraordinary.
And the only good news I think you told us a month ago, we only have 30 seconds left, didn't you say some coalition of state chief justices filed a friend of the court brief on the good person side of this?
Right.
And they do it so rarely that the hope is that they'll have some impact on the justices.
Have some impact on those 3 judges who are, as I said, we're in trouble if that's the middle of the court, but that's the middle of the court.
Why don't you call us before the next appearance and tell us you have some good news? And then we can, as unbelievable. Nancy Gertner, we really appreciate your time, as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great to see you. We have been speaking with Nancy Gertner, retired federal judge, a senior lecturer at Harvard Law School, and a BPR regular. Well, coming up, American journalist Grant Wall died while covering the World Cup in Qatar. We'll speak with NBC Sports Authority Trenny Casey next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
It's not over yet. More smart conversation about community issues is up ahead with Jim Brady and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio. Right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And National Grid, providing access to electric heat pumps that can help businesses achieve their sustainability goals. You can learn more about heat pump technology at ngrid.com/future. Experience an uplifting holiday and musical feast that will inspire hope, stir reflection, and invite the peace of the season with O Holy Night, Christmas with the Tabernacle Choir, tonight at 8 on GBH2.
Trusted, local,
News. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Boston Public Radio. We're live at the Boston Public Library. Mayor Michelle Wu will be here for another round of Ask the Mayor. She'll talk about her meeting with incoming Governor Maura Healey, housing stability, whether 16-year-olds and non-citizen immigrants should be voting in Boston, and much more. Got a question for the mayor? Call or text us at 877-301-8970, or just come in and ask it yourself in our studio at the Boston Public Library. But first, it's NBC Sports Boston's Trenny Casey to talk about underdogs at the World Cup, helping to sports wash the less thrilling news out of Qatar.
I'm Jared Bowen, in for Marjorie Egan. After the mayor, you may know him from TikTok, his viral YouTube video series Gale, or that remarkably luscious mullet. Stand-up comic and Stowe native Chris Fleming joins us at the library ahead of his show at the Wilbur this Saturday. It's all next on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Scientists are marking a major milestone in the long-running quest to reproduce the power of the sun. NPR's Jeff Brumfield reports on the advance announced today by the federal government that could someday lead to clean energy that helps the planet fight climate change.
Last week at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in California, scientists did something they've never done in a laboratory setting before. They got more energy out of a nuclear fusion reaction than they put into it, and there are some caveats, but this is a big deal because nuclear fusion is very hard to make happen on Earth. Basically, fusion is the process of sticking lightweight atoms together. When they fuse, when they glom together, they release a ton of energy, but getting them to stick is really tough.
NPR's Jeff Brumfield reporting. President Biden's expected to sign legislation today that protects marriage rights for interracial and same-sex couples. More from NPR's Asma Khalid.
The bill passed with bipartisan support in both the House and Senate. The White House has described it as a historic piece of legislation. It'll provide federal protection for same-sex and interracial marriages and ensure marriages conducted in one state are recognized in another. A Supreme Court decision in 2015 found that same-sex marriage is constitutionally protected. But Congress's decision to put these protections explicitly into law comes after the Dobbs decision earlier this year. That's when the Supreme Court struck down abortion, which had not been codified into law, and widespread inconsistencies in state laws were exposed. Asma Khalid, NPR News.
Biden's praising the latest report on inflation. New numbers released by the Labor Department today show consumer prices rose less than expected in November. Here's NPR's Windsor Johnston.
President Biden acknowledges that prices are still too high, but says things are getting better and headed in the right direction.
It's going to take time to get inflation back to normal levels as we make the transition to a more stable and steady growth. But we could see setbacks along the way as well. We shouldn't take anything for granted. But what is clear is that my economic plan is working and we're just getting started.
The latest figures from the Labor Department show consumer prices rose by 0.1% last month and increased 7.1% from a year ago. The report comes as the Federal Reserve is preparing for what's expected to be another interest rate hike tomorrow, the 7th in 9 months. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
Nearly 1.5 million Ram pickups worldwide, most of them in North America, are covered in a new recall by Stellantis. The company, formerly Fiat Chrysler, warns a vehicle's tailgates may not be securely closed and could lead to cargo falling off the pickups mid-transit. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 126 points. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro in Brookline today. The state's Board of Higher Education is setting its priorities for 2023. From our higher ed desk, GBH's Kirk Carapezza reports that education leaders are making recommendations on how Massachusetts should put money from the new millionaire's tax towards public colleges and universities.
While the state legislature and soon-to-be Governor Maura Healey hold the purse strings, the board is trying to set an agenda and build consensus. The board does control tuition at the state's 15 community colleges. Chairman Chris Gabrielli wants it to go further and take control of fees, which can drive up costs for students. Public college presidents oppose that idea, saying it would force them to make layoffs and cut back on student services. In Boston, Kirk Carapezza, GBH News, 89.7.
100 sea turtles recovering from hypothermia are headed south for treatment. More turtles than usual have washed up on Cape Cod beaches since last month, and many became stuck and unable to move to warmer waters. Scientists say it's a possible sign of climate change effects in the Gulf of Maine. The turtles received their first round of treatment in either Buzzards Bay or Boston, and they're now on their way to secondary rehab facilities in Mississippi and Florida. The nonprofit group Turtles Fly 2 is organizing the flights out of Marshfield. In sports, the Bruins host the Islanders at the Garden tonight. Celtics play the Lakers in Los Angeles, and FIFA World Cup semifinals start today with Argentina playing Croatia. I'm Henry Santoro, GBH News, 89.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investments in securities involve the risk of loss.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. Marjorie has COVID, so she's out today. We hope she's going to be back via Zoom tomorrow. We shall see. Jared Bowen, Executive Arts Editor at GBH, is sitting in. Hello again, Jared.
Hello again, Jim.
We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Did I just say that? I can't remember. What I know I didn't say is in 30 minutes, or actually a little bit less, we'll be joined by Mayor Wu, who'll be with us for an hour to take our questions and yours. And by the way, Fernando over there, wherever he is, he'll be at that table in a minute, or he's back in the back, will be available if you want to ask a question from the floor of the library. We're joined now by Trenny Casey. Trenny's an anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston and a BPR contributor. Hello there, Trenny.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
So let's start with some sad, almost news you can't quite understand or process, and that's the death of Grant Wahl, the American journalist who collapsed and died after not feeling well at the World Cup in Qatar. We've seen his family respond. We've seen so many people, Billie Jean King, respond for the work that he did, what a force he was using his journalism for good. But tell us what you know of him in your interactions. I know you never met him in person, but you did interact with him, and what you make of this loss.
Well, first of all, we do have some, quasi-breaking news regarding his death. They do have the autopsy results. The family is expected to release a statement soon as to the cause of death. His brother, Eric, who initially, I think in the initial stages of grief, on Friday, posted to Instagram that he thought that his brother was murdered. He said that he suspected foul play after Grant talked to him about just some, odd things that had happened. Someone being in his Airbnb, like a stranger in his home, and coming down with this sickness and cold and not being able to shake it while otherwise healthy. He has since backed off those claims and said he no longer believes foul play was an issue and that the family will be releasing a statement soon, so we should know the cause of death. But Grant was... again, I never met him personally, but what I'll always remember about him is at one point when I was talking about mental health in some capacity, he reached out to me and sent a really nice message telling me that, he was grateful for my voice and that it was an important topic. When he lost his job at Sports Illustrated, I sent him a private message, telling him I was sorry to hear it, and we kind of conversed back and forth about the industry and its struggles. And this is someone I'd never met in person, which happens often now, right, within the same industries, in media and other, other industries. But there was something about him to the point where his brother even said in an article with the Kansas City Star, this is someone who is constantly fighting for the voiceless, constantly putting a voice to the voiceless, to the point where his brother's like, maybe you can put that aside and just cover the games while you're in Qatar, because it could put you in danger. And because he received death threats after wearing, if you're not familiar with the story, his brother Eric is gay, is married to a man. And on the first day of match play that Grant covered, he wore a T-shirt with a soccer ball in the middle and a rainbow circle around it. He was detained. They did end up letting him sit in the press box and continue to cover the World Cup. They did not revoke his credential. But after that, he was receiving death threats. And then there was also the strange person who showed up that they didn't know, who was in their dwelling. But at this point, at least the family, at least his brother is saying publicly to the New York Post that he does not suspect foul play.
Just one more detail here. I mean, you intimated this, and beyond the fact that, from what I understand, not that I read much soccer press, he is one of the most respected people in terms of knowledge of the game. He's covered tons of women's and men's World Cup. But the other point you mentioned, which is why I think the respect for him is so high, he's written relentlessly. We read one of his pieces this morning about migrant workers, particularly in Qatar, and how they, according to him and other sources, they're not a handful of deaths, and then 400, as the government finally admitted, but potentially thousands. But he has been a really vocal advocate for protections for men and women who are at great risk and really exploited by the government there, which is an understatement.
I'll be honest, Jim, when I saw that he died suddenly in Qatar, my initial thought was that there was foul play, because just days before he died, he had a Substack, which is where he published much of his work, while he also did work for CBS. And on his Substack, he did a lengthy, long-form article about the callousness of the Qatari government in the wake of numerous migrant worker deaths. And then he was dead, 24 hours or so, 48 hours later. And listen, I hope we also remember the people who are there. I actually have a really good friend, my friend's husband, and a good friend of mine. He was in the press box and was there trying to revive
When this happened?
They had all of the media who are there. You're around each other. When you're at an event like the World Cup or the Olympics, you spend so much time with people, and they were just at his house celebrating his birthday 2 days prior to his death. He had just turned 49 years old. It's just really a tragic, awful story that has rocked the sports world.
I mean, how are we reconciling, by the way, the issues that he was raising, the fact that everybody around the world is excited about the World Cup, and it is this great moment where you can walk into bar. I was mentioning earlier, I was just in LA. You go to LA, you look at the bars, they're watching the game. You come back to Boston, they're watching the game. It's something which we need right now is unifying everyone. However, there are so many issues that need to be addressed in that world, that part of the world, which are, with some exceptions, notable exceptions, as we've been talking about, are going unaddressed.
I mean, I think, unless you're Fox and you just choose to gloss over it, to be quite frank, and you want to just pretend that there's just soccer going on, if you are Telemundo, if you're BBC, if you're Grant Wall, if you're the New York Times, if you're the Washington Post, you are simultaneously covering the action on the field, but also talking about the human rights violations. You're not skirting those things. I think you can hold them independently, right? Like, you can like a game of basketball, but not like a player for what he stands for on the court. You can like the Brooklyn Nets and not like Kyrie Irving, right? And so I think those two things can both be true. I think you can watch Argentina-Croatia this afternoon and really maybe root for Lionel Messi to win that first one, or root for the underdog in Croatia, to root for Morocco. I mean, my neighborhood has been filled with Moroccan fans coming to the North End.
First African nation,
yes,
right?
First African nation to get to the Final Four, watching in the streets and driving their cars through afterwards. And you can also say, well, this is such an amazing sports achievement, but why does it have to happen in this country, in these conditions? And we need to hold FIFA to a higher standard.
Well, while you say you can, and by the way, the other thing Wall wrote a lot about, speaking of that, was the corruption of FIFA and the decision to award it to these games to Qatar or Qatar. Eugene Robinson in the Washington Post wrote a great piece this morning, almost suggesting that you can't do both things at once. He didn't mean literally. The headline of which I wish I had pulled it was something like, "The World Cup is incredibly thrilling, unfortunately." And what he meant was that because they're two underdogs in the finals, Morocco and Croatia, because Messi, arguably one of the greatest players ever, is in the Final Four too, there's so much focus on that. The numbers, he said, I don't know if this is true, there's 7 billion people in the world. It is estimated that 5 billion already have seen at least some part of the World Cup. He calls it, sports washing, that essentially the games are so thrilling, the competition is so thrilling, so that while intellectually we almost all know about these things, it's full focus on the games themselves. I hope you're right and he's not.
I do wonder if you're watching the games in England on BBC or in France on whatever their network is. I wonder if you're in that arena. I don't know if you read this article. It was a scathing article in The Guardian.
No. Is this about the migrant deaths?
No, this is about Fox's coverage. It was scathing in how they have handled and not just glossed over the human rights issues in Qatar, but sort of in in a jingoistic tone when talking about Qatar. You've got the bells and the whistles and the casino type, the lights. It's like almost dumbing down and diminishing Muslim culture to the point where American fans are not getting, I don't think, the same viewing experience as someone in Canada or Europe or South America, where they are doing, at least for sure, I think the BBC in England is doing a better job of being culturally sensitive to what goes on in the Middle East, but also holding them accountable. Like they refused at the BBC to show the opening ceremonies because they were not going to glorify a country that has had so much death and corruption surrounding this, and they've chosen around the matches as well to talk about what's going on. So I do wonder if Eugene Robinson lived somewhere else, if maybe he'd have a slightly different opinion.
We're talking to Trenny Casey.
Well, so come back here to New England, and it's sort of a similar thing. We acknowledge that football is fabulous. And we love it, and it is favored by so many people on Sunday and Monday night sometimes, but we also know that football is incredibly destructive. And I'm saying this because of this great piece by Bob Hohler in the Boston Globe, looking at the team from 2000, the Patriots team from 2001 that won the Super Bowl, launched the dynasty, but looks back at those players now. What's become of them?
Yeah, it's really sad. And sadly, I work with Ted Johnson. And Ted, to his credit, Ted was a linebacker for the Patriots in the early 2000s, won a Super Bowl. He is so candid and vulnerable about what he went through, his addiction issues, bankruptcy issues. But I did not know the story of Jermaine Wiggins, who's a tight end who I've also worked with at WEEI. And the Sports Hub before that, he's been on our show. I had no idea that he went from the depths of financial ruin to working his way back up to try and support his 3 children and his wife. And I think this is a part of football. I mean, there have been untimely deaths in this group. This group in particular, I believe there have been, is there 7 or 8 members of, and I forget the exact number, 7 or 8 members of the 2001 Patriots
7
who have passed away.
Between 35 and 50 years old.
35 and 50 years old. Now, some have just been tragic accidents, like a car accident. Some have been because of addiction issues and dementia. But in Troy Brown, who was also on those teams and is now, of course, the wide receivers coach for the Patriots, every once in a while, he too would be very candid about how difficult it was. And he would never name names, but they do have a support system in place within the Patriots and I think throughout the NFL where you can reach out to each other as a support system as you leave the NFL and make that transition. But Troy said sometimes you just can't find guys. They don't want to be found because I don't think that we talk enough. And I am blanking on his name right now. I did a panel with him a couple weeks ago. He was a wide receiver for the Patriots in those mid-2000s Super Bowls, like I guess more like 2013, 14, 15 in there. Young kid. And he said, when you leave football, they do not talk to you about how difficult that transition is. You go from being a guy that has everything lined up for you. So you walk in the morning and you have a schedule and it tells you exactly what you're supposed to do from the minute you walk in the door to the minute you go to bed at night, because you have homework essentially during the season. And then all you've ever been in your life, he said, particularly for black men, because many of them grew up in poverty and football was their only way out, you grow up with the identity of only being a football player. And when you're no longer a football player, who are you? And that happens to you. For many people, it happens well into adulthood, right? When you're in your 60s or your 70s, maybe you have children, you have other hobbies, you've had a time to develop something other than your career. But for these guys, football has been their life for many of them since they were 5 or 6 years old. Imagine that all of a sudden being taken away from you. And in some cases, it's injury. In some cases, it's choice to retire. But, we kind of look and laugh at Tom Brady. Oh, you're still playing and you're not as good anymore. Like, when are you going to walk away? I think it's very difficult to walk away. And I think that what happens afterwards can be a much darker period than most people want to admit or recognize because there's so much money involved.
A couple of things. They talk about, in addition to the 7 people between 35 and 50 who have died, the average life expectancy of NFL players is 59.6 years, which is unbelievable.
I mean, did you watch the game last night?
I watched 10 minutes of it.
So there was a point in the game last night.
I saw that end for the Patriots. Who got hit in the head?
Devontae Parker, a wide receiver, gets up and he's clearly wobbling. The referees don't stop the game. The independent medical teams don't do anything. It took Nelson Aguilar, his teammate, to start wildly waving his arms, taking a knee and going like this. Like, you have to help this guy. At least now they're helping each other. Because I believe there was a time time when they didn't, they would turn a blind eye and go, if he can get up and walk and he can make a catch, he's such a good player. But they didn't. He was taken out of the game.
I've done concussion events with Ted Johnson.
He
One of
is-
the points he makes is, let's put it this way, there's a disincentive when he was playing to complain to the coaches that your head hurts and you got your bell rung and that sort of thing. You know, by the way, well, we said 7 people between 35 and 50 died in this piece by Bob Holler. 8 of them declared bankruptcy. 7 additional who did not declare bankruptcy had to deal with liens, foreclosures, evictions, etc. That's roughly half. You add those 3 things up, it's almost half the team that won the Super Bowl in 2001.
Well, and I say this to people all the time, and people sometimes roll their eyes, right? Like I say $1 million. I know it seems like a lot of money if you make $1 million a year. Let's call it for 8 years of an NFL career. That'd be 22 to 30, which is a pretty common stretch of time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's $8 million, but that's if you meet all your incentives. That's not with your NFLPA dues. That's not paying your agent. And that is not, and I see this firsthand with a lot of guys, they come into the league and they are those low-end roster guys who make $1 million a year, but they've got a house where they live. They've got another house somewhere. They've got nice cars. Their wives are
They have
wearing...
their friends from back home.
Their wives are wearing they're wearing the biggest diamonds. They're throwing the biggest weddings. They're wearing the most expensive shoes and clothes and all of that stuff. And now you might be investing it and it doesn't matter. Maybe that's just your, discretionary income. But for a lot of them, you slip into this lifestyle that, if you're a hedge fund guy and you're making $50 million a year for 20 years, great, live like that. But when you're only when your total take-home income is a couple $1 million after 8 years, in the grand scheme of life, when you're living that kind of lifestyle, it's not sustainable and it leads a lot of people to ruin. What did they say in that article? 16% of NFL players end up bankrupt after they leave the NFL.
Well, did you know how to spend money or how to take care of your money at that age? No, nobody
Do you know how
does.
much credit card debt I was in when I was in my mid-20s? Because I was like, want to go to Acapulco. Okay, no one goes to Acapulco anymore, but you know what I mean. They Cancun. Sure, we'll just swipe that credit card. I'll pay it off later.
Why don't they go to Acapulco?
Oh my God, didn't you hear? Like people are getting murdered like left and right in Acapulco. You can't go to Acapulco.
Jim doesn't
anymore.
watch enough Dateline. So, but that's my point is that you don't have the financial literacy. It's not provided to you. There was that story about the big dinners that the NFL players are expected to buy.
Oh, and it's the rookies.
That the rookies are expected. Yeah, so they're encouraged to spend all this money. You add the brain damage, and this is what I was going to say as well, is the science is there. You can't ignore this anymore. We know exactly what it does. And so you have the sense that this is the thread to all of these issues that we're seeing with this 2001 team. It's extraordinary.
Well, and also, what we also don't take into account, you're Tom Brady, right? You make all this money, you're Aaron Rodgers, you get all these extracurricular things too, right? You have all these endorsements that you do. And then when you're done, Fox says, hey, I'm going to hand you a contract. I'm going to give you $375 million to talk on TV for 10 years. Like, that's insane money. But the guy at the end of the roster, who is the special teams guy, the Brendan Schooler, who's making the league minimum his entire time, when he's done, he's just done. And unless while he was in college, he went to class, he paid attention, he did internships. What do you do when you're done? Yeah. What do you do when you're done?
Well, one good thing the NFL, which I'm not fond of, the NFL that is doing finally, because a part of this, not because of the story, but it's financial literacy for these young kids.
They do try to
who
help
never had
more
any
now than
money,
they did
and now-
before.
Can we move to a good news story while you're still here? Brittany Griner is back. And you know what struck me? I mean, there's the whole discussion about Paul Whelan being left behind. And by the way, Paul Whelan's sister, Elizabeth, is going to be on All Things Considered on 89.7 this afternoon. And obviously she intimately knows what's going on. You know what really stuck with me? Of all the details about her coming back, did you read the thing where she's on the plane
Yes, this
with
was
the
the
chief
best article.
hostage negotiator? Explain to people what she did on this flight back after being in captivity for, 10 months?
It was an 18-hour flight or 14?
I think so. I think it was 18.
It was like 14 or 18-hour flight. She talked for 12 hours of the 18-hour flight, and they kept saying to her, Brittany, do you want to relax? Are you tired? And she said, I have been able to speak to no one for all of these months because I've been in a Russian penal colony, in a Russian prison where everyone only speaks Russian. And when she walked onto the plane, she introduced herself to every single person on the plane to figure out who they were, what they did, and thanked them for for freeing her, for bringing her back to her family in time for the holidays. This is great, but I really hope that we do not forget. The one part of the story that has bothered me from the beginning is that Paul Whelan has been there for 8 years now.
4, I think.
Is it 4?
I think it's 4.
Or
Can
is it-
someone check?
It's a significant
Thank you.
amount.
We'll
It's
tell
a
you in minute.
significant amount of time, and we didn't know his name until an athlete went over there and was arrested. And if it wasn't for Brittany Griner, most of us would not talk about Paul Whelan, and we should not stop talking about him as well.
We know that
because
happens.
you should not your human currency should not depend on whether or not you're famous and wealthy and people know who you. It's 4 years, thank you. He's been there for 4 years. Who you are. Like, Paul Whelan has a family at all that misses him dearly. Paul Whelan, I know it's a more severe charge of espionage, which is more than what she was in prison for. But I really hope that we do not forget him and we do not stop talking about his plight and what he is going through because, an American star was able to come home.
And she's already playing basketball. That was the other great part of that story. She came home, she's already playing.
She's probably desperate to move, right?
Exactly.
And just have some normalcy in her life.
She had to be crouched over in some of those.
Casey, I'm sorry. When she was first grabbed, you and Marjorie and I talked about one of the reasons why so many of these great athletes, and she's one of the best basketball players, play overseas because the pay in the WNBA is so horrible. Is that something that will get addressed because of this?
So
nightmare?
it has already been addressed.
It has?
I mean, not probably to the extent that it's going to keep all, female basketball players that are going to be able to just play in the WNBA. But the new president of the WNBA, in the wake of this, they have been working on better contracts, better endorsements. They've been talking to the NBA about better investment. Because what we should remember is that while the WNBA does not bring in the entertainment dollars anywhere near the NBA, what the NBA does, they are partners in the league together. And to me,
What
I
does
look
that
at
mean,
it.
partners?
But I mean, the NBA owns the WNBA. It's the WNBA, right? It's the women's
okay, I
NBA,
guess
so
that
it's part
makes
of the
sense.
National
Okay.
Basketball Association. And to me, it's similar to, not entirely similar, but the U.S. men's national team and the U.S. women's national team. Like, the U.S. women's national team is making money off the men's national team's success because they pool their money together. Now, I'm not saying you have to pool your money together and LeBron James has to give part of his contract to Brittany Griner or, Brianna Iasco, but there has to be something where it's a more livable. If you're going to use your name and your likeness and everything in the NBA, then they should at least not have to go to Russia to play basketball.
Speaking of LeBron James, in light of the fact that people in this region love to
Pickleball,
trash
professional
LeBron James.
pickleball owner,
well,
LeBron
no,
James?
beyond that, he did a beautiful tweet about Grant Wall.
Yes, he did.
Because it turned out when he was a high school player, and if people don't remember this, I actually remember watching a high school game with this kid LeBron James in Ohio. He was so huge, everybody assumed he's going to be great. I don't know if they knew he'd be this great. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. I remembered he was on the cover. And the guy who wrote the story was Grant Wall. And all these years later, LeBron tweeted after the death of Wall about what a generous, sweet, kind person he was and how I'll never forget. I thought it was really a wonderful thing he did.
I have yet to hear anyone, and listen, obviously when someone dies publicly, people never say, they always say the nicest things, but behind the scenes, it's not like there's text chains going around like, everyone's saying he's a nice guy, but, maybe it was this. I mean,
but James didn't have to do it, is what I meant.
Yes, it is by and large.
Yeah.
He was a great person who will be greatly missed.
Okay, before you go, the Red Sox are taking a lot of heat. And I have to say, I'm a big defender of this ownership.
You love baseball.
Well, I'm a big defender of this ownership because after whatever it was, 84 years, they won 4 championships.
Yeah, but you can't just stop winning all of a sudden when you win championships.
Well, I understand it. They were in last place a couple of years ago, and then they won the World Series the next year. So it's almost like everybody's attitude. Well, obviously, you're on the other side of this. What do you think? John Henry and the boys are letting the team down?
Yes, I do. Because it's one thing, like, to go from last to first because then you invested, but they purposely got rid of Dave Dombrowski, who they said, okay, we got to win again, so go spend all this money, and now it's been pulled way back. Like, listen, if you lose Xander Bogaerts because you offer him, 10 years and $250 million, and the Padres tack on 5 more years, and you're like, well, that's 15. Come on, that's a bridge too far. Like, that's ridiculous. We tried our hardest. Their best offer, according to the Boston Globe, was like 6 years, $160 million. Again, I know people listening at home are like, why don't you just take it? Well, because the Padres offered him 11 years and $260 or $280 million. Like, they're just not competitive anymore. They are not competitive. They're not paying. They have now lost Xander Bogaerts. They have lost Mookie Betts. They're probably going to lose Rafael Devers. They let John Lester walk back.
All homegrown, by the way.
All homegrown players that were well-liked, championship players who, by the way, all went on to win titles with other teams and were still very, very good. So their investments that they have made have been bad ones, like Chris Sale. okay, that's your makeup for John Lester. Now the guy breaks like a nail every
Like a
time
twig, it's
like
true.
yes, like every time he gets on a bike, he falls off and breaks his leg.
So do I.
Kenley Jansen, nice pickup. Nice pickup.
Who
You need
is
a reliever.
he?
He's a reliever. He was a closer
He
with
is?
He was a closer with the LA Dodgers. He's
Sure he
35
was.
years old. Still a pretty good. He led the National League in saves last year at 41. Like he's
that's
fine.
nice.
It'll help bolster the back end of your bullpen. But are you going to? And this is the worst part about it, Jim. They're not investing in their players on the field anymore. Instead, they're trying to buy like a bunch of middle players, right? Like, well, we'll give you like a 1 or 2 year deal for 18 or 20 or 30 million dollars, but we're not going to give somebody 10 for 260. Well, that's what you have to do. You have to do what the Yankees did. The Yankees, when they thought Aaron Judge was going to walk, they opened the wallet and they gave him what he wanted. Do you know who they are, Jim? Do I have time for a quick story?
You do.
Tom Caron, who is the pre- and post-game host for the Red Sox, posted this picture in Chaim Bloom's suite at the winter meetings last week, and it was a bottle of wine. I love wine, so I quickly Googled. I was like, what kind of wine is Chaim Bloom? Like, the president of baseball operations of the Red Sox, a rich guy. What is he drinking? It was $15.96 at Total Wine. And I was like, this is the Red Sox in this. This is the perfect analogy for the Red Sox. Chaim Bloom wants a case of $20 wine from Wegmans, and the Yankees will buy a case of Screaming Eagle. If you are not familiar with Screaming Eagle, it is like the cult wine in Napa right now. It retails for about $3,000 to $4,000 a bottle. The Yankees are buying cases of Screaming Eagle, and the Red Sox are buying cases of Total Wine that I take to like my family's house who doesn't like wine for Thanksgiving.
So they wake up with a headache.
Trenny Casey.
Invest in something good, Red Sox.
Nice to see you, Trenny Casey.
Nice to see
Thank
you
you so
guys.
much for being here.
It's good to see you. We've been speaking with Trenny Casey, anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston. Up next, Boston Mayor Michelle Wu joins us for an hour for Ask the Mayor live here at the Boston Public Library. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
East Boston went from having a park nestled within the heart of the neighborhood to a neighborhood that's now home to one of the country's busiest airports.
The obvious manifestations of going from an Olmsted Park to a polluting, noisy airport is as straightforward as you could imagine.
We've got more asthma, respiratory diseases, hearing losses. Why? Because this airport has destroyed it.
I'm Jeremy Siegel, part 2 of our series, The Price of Flight, tomorrow on GBH's Morning Edition.
Support for our programs comes from you and the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds for the citizens and businesses of the Commonwealth. You can see if you have unclaimed money at findmassmoney.com. And the Addison Gallery of American Art in Andover, presenting Rosamond Purcell, Nature Stands Aside. The artist's first retrospective shows her career from the 60s to today, now through December 31st. AddisonGallery.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I am Jim Browdy. Jared Bowden is sitting in for Marjorie, who's got COVID. We'll check in with her at 2 o'clock. Hopefully she'll be back on Zoom tomorrow. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're now joined at the library in person by Mayor Michelle Wu for the December edition of Ask the Mayor. She'll be with us for an hour, taking our questions, your calls at 877-301-8970. If you're at the library and would like to ask a question, if you go to Fernando, raise your hand. He will make a list, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Mayor Wu, it's wonderful to see you. How you doing?
Nice to see you. I'm great.
Thank you so much for being here.
Can we get this out of the way? I mean, this is so embarrassing.
This is my show and tell for the month. So I brought my grandma's of New England coffee cake, which is a personal favorite, but also what we serve the royal family.
Oh,
with.
excuse.
The royal couple. So there was some tea and my grandma's in the room.
By the way, they're fab. Can we were going to ask this later since you brought it up. So give us a little backstory here. Were you nervous, by the way?
I mean, I was there was so much that went into every detail of it that by the time it happened, there was a little bit of a sense of relief of, okay, months of this is actually happening. The kids looked presentable. They were in the room when we did the little gift exchange, welcome to Boston Peace. And then every event, despite the rain, despite the cold, it was just a really beautiful representation of our city and all the great work that's happening here. So I was really proud of what we were able to help highlight on the international stage.
And it did strike me, we saw, of course, only the official events, but from what we did see, it seemed that they were very legitimately concerned with the issues that they met about and addressed here.
Yeah, every detail of what our infrastructure looked and felt like. And we tried to highlight that in just a few short days with every facet of the visit connected to something that we were doing here. For example, as part of the bit of Boston that we would send back with them from the gifts, the kids had given them a copy of Make Way for Ducklings for their 3 kids and wrote a little letter to them. And then we presented actually a beautiful, beautiful live edge wooden bowl from the Arboretum. It's part of, there's a 200+ year old white oak that is at the top of Peters Hill, which actually was there even before the Arboretum was officially created. And so it's known as the witness tree in the Arboretum. It's seen every bit of climate change and societal change. And so a couple years ago in a snowstorm, a branch fell off and they made a bowl out of that. And we also gave them a gurgling cod, which is something that I like to highlight.
I'd prefer my grandma's coffee cake. Before we leave this topic, we'll get to other things. I'm not a big Monarch fan, I have to admit, but we had Hannah Jones on, who's the executive director of the program that was making the awards to 5 organizations here. And she went out of her way to say in a convincing fashion that this is not just a rhetorical commitment, that he is totally a hands-on kind of leader of this climate change effort. Is that the impression you're left with?
I would say that both the Prince and Princess of Wales were extremely interested in the minute details of implementation, of how we could knit together. I mean, even on one of our walks in East Boston, going all the way to the water and thinking about seawalls and infrastructure to protect against storm surge, they had brought a previous winner from the first year of awards, whose whole technology is installing living seawalls, and so they kind of replant and recreate the structures and corals and other ways that allow for sea life to live more productively while also absorbing water. And so we made a commitment there that Boston would become the first city in North America to partner with them on that. Okay, we're talking to Mayor Michelle Wu. She's here for an hour. Enough for the Monarchs for now, unless you have a question about it. The number to call her or text her is 877-301-8970.
We'll stay with the good news for a moment. I'm looking at images online right now of potential improvements for Franklin Park. I was there this summer for arts-related programming. It's well worn, shall we say, at this point. So what is the plan that you're rolling out to refurbish the park? And it's a very, very large park. Yes,
Some 520 plus acres and a historic jewel of Frederick Law Olmsted that this city is really lucky to have right in the center. It's, of course, not just a community space and place for programming and arts and beloved annual traditions like the Kite Festival and Playhouse in the Park and all of that, but the lungs of our city, right? So much of temperature control and animal habitats and biodiversity of our city is represented in that green heart that Boston has. And so we really want to ensure that this is now the result of many, many years of community feedback and advocacy, but we have put forward a 450-page plan that lays out the specific ideas, and now over the next 60 days, we're asking everyone to help digest that, the summary or the longer version, give us your prioritization for implementation, because as soon as this next year's city budget, we want to see some of those ideas actually in the capital budget and well on their way to implementation.
So Mayor Wu, before we get to the calls and text and that sort of thing, you had your first meeting with the governor-elect, Maura Healey, who will be here standing right there exactly a week from today to take people's questions as well. Neither of you were wildly forthcoming about the content of the meeting. No, I'm not.
That was an accident, sort of. I mean, I will just say, we had been desperately trying to find a time slot, and Earthshot took up a lot of the time, and so there was one window, but right afterwards, I was scheduled to be at the opening of Collins Courtyard. Colin McGrath, the 3-year-old several years ago, who was just horrifically lost in South Boston with a vehicular crash, and now the courtyard and the public housing development right there redeveloped in his name and his memory. And so it was a really important event that I couldn't be late to. And so by the time we were out of the meeting, we only had just 10 minutes left for questions, and it felt shorter than it was meant to.
Okay, so let's spend a minute. Did you talk about your concerns about rent stabilization? Did you talk about a seat on the T? Were those things on the agenda?
Yeah, so we spoke about a lot of detail, a lot of various issues, a whole range of ways, things that the city had that might come before the state soon, or areas that the city and state might work together. But it was really just an introductory conversation for me to say, we are here, whatever you need. The city of Boston is prepared for your success, and to hear that vice versa as well. And I think the most concrete thing to come out of the meeting was that we will ensure that we are in regular conversation.
So no firm commitments from her on any of the stuff you cared
I
about
didn't
yet.
press for anything.
So one other thing before we get to the calls, at least from me, is the city council is on record now saying that 16 and 17-year-olds should be able to vote in municipal elections. Obviously, ultimately, if that were to happen, it has to be approved as a home rule petition by the state. Yesterday, there was discussion about allowing certain non-citizen immigrants to vote in local elections. Where are you, before we worry about the legislature in Healy, where are you on 16 and 17-year-olds voting and immigrants, non-citizen immigrants being allowed to vote in municipal elections?
I am supportive, and I've already signed the 16 and 17-year-old home rule petition, so that is on its way up to the state. In terms of legal permanent residents and immigrants who are not yet at full citizenship voting, I think there's a little bit more to see in terms of what comes out of the council process. That one is not formally before our administration yet for a signature, but generally I believe that we should be trying to find ways to expand civic participation everywhere we can. There are some more, I think, implementation issues to figure out when it comes to this second one compared to the first one, and I know the council is working its way through.
And before we go to questions, just to go back to Maura Healey for a moment, what is your expectation of the relationship you and the now governor-elect will have, and the voice that you'll have in her administration?
I'm really excited. I think we have someone who is familiar with the issues, familiar with the city, and recognizes the weight of the challenge and opportunity that we have before us. We talked in that conversation mostly around the big issues that I believe are nearing or at or even past the make or break point for the city: housing, and just how much housing prices are affecting every bit of what we're trying to do in the city. Transportation access, and how critical it is that we get these next couple of decisions right, as her choice around a general manager and a structure for how the T takes on its next set of issues. The Green Line extension is an example of when we do make a big investment, it's life-changing. I mean, now the fact that students from Tufts, residents from Somerville and Medford and surrounding communities can just have one seat and get straight into downtown or Chinatown or Copley, frequent the businesses here, get anywhere across the city, that is a huge economic burst for us. And so we need to keep the momentum going. I mean, that was the first infrastructure major expansion that happened in decades. So we kind of have to accelerate and flip the pace of that a little bit. And of course, we talked about Mass and Cass and some other subsets of those two issues as well.
877-301-8970. Mayor Wu is with us till the bottom of the 1 o'clock hour. Lisa in a car, you're first with Mayor Michelle Wu on Boston Public Radio. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Sure.
Mayor Wu, I am a rideshare driver part-time, but I'm also a member of the Massachusetts Independent Drivers Guild. And we try to help rideshare and delivery drivers, mostly in Boston, but throughout the state. If you were to walk out of the library right now and look down Boylston Street towards Chick-fil-A, you would see delivery drivers who are trying to make $5, $6 on a delivery. If they can find a place to park, they will, and pay for parking to make that $5 or $6. But also, there are probably a couple officers down there giving tickets. And I was just hoping maybe your office would be open to a discussion that could implement some sort of voucher program. These drivers are just trying to make some money serving those who work and live in Boston. And I've met drivers who have $1,000, $2,000 or more in tickets, just trying to do their job and drive with dignity. And I'm wondering if you've thought about some sort of program. Are you open to
We got it, Lisa.
supporting drivers in this way?
We got it. Let's hear what the mayor has to say. Lisa, thanks for the call.
Thanks, Lisa, for calling in and for elevating this. I think this is an example of just how interconnected many of our challenges are. And with what you're discussing, we have not only a kind of workforce and quality of life issue for drivers who are doing their best to try to support their families, but we have the businesses that they are connected to and how the kind of nature of how people get not only their food deliveries, but goods and services of all kinds more and more instantaneously with Amazon Prime and all other kind of immediate economic changes. That is having a huge impact on traffic in the city as well. And so that exact example that you gave right down the street from here has been quite a nightmare for traffic flow on many, many occasions. We've been working very closely with Chick-fil-A, and in particular because we cannot have traffic brought to a standstill with double, triple parking, because then it ends up so that no one can get access to anything, and not only does it make it worse for the drivers' lives harder if traffic is always an issue, but for the businesses, for the employees, for everyone who lives and works in our city. And so curb management is a key component of this. I think I would rather, instead of trying to address a symptom of the challenge, which is, okay, we have all these tickets because there are laws being violated, how do we change the system of what our curb is used for and how people can get access so that we're not having to choose between traffic or people getting deliveries for food?
Thank you so much for your call. By the way, half the text so far are things like dying to know what they talked about at the Celtics game. We're not going to ask that question. I'm sorry. Find her on the street somewhere and ask
We talked
her
about Jason Tatum. He had a 49-point game.
I guess there's your answer to your question, Bill from Gloucester. Cheryl, did he understand anything about it? No, I don't care. Cheryl in South Boston, you're on with Mayor Wu. Welcome.
On the inside, of course.
Hi, Cheryl. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, how are you?
Great.
Hi, Mayor. Thanks for having me on.
Sure.
COVID has increased in not just our wastewater, but has tripled in Boston Public Schools since Thanksgiving. And we face a triple-demic with not just COVID, but flu and RSV. BPS Family for COVID Safety has collected more than 175 letters calling on you and the superintendent to implement pool testing and require universal masking for at least 10 days after this December break. Will you urge BPS to put common sense measures into place?
Thank you so much, Cheryl. We are, I think in some ways, one silver lining of all that everyone had experienced over the last few years is that we have now built the muscle memory for our Boston Public Health Commission and Boston Public Schools to be working step by step in tandem with all of the decisions that are coming before us and all the data that's coming before us as well. In fact, both my kids are in the school system, so I get the tests that come home in their backpacks every week, and the messages and voicemails that are reminding families to administer those tests at home. So the goal is that we are looking to continue that testing. It's because of, anyway, I won't get into all the reasons why it has been complicated, especially related to the state in how to implement pool testing on a more direct, in-person, in-school experience. But our way to do that from a different mechanism is to send those tests home with every child and to ensure that there are reminders that go home that people should be testing at home and reporting back in the results if there is a positive and keeping their kids home. And there's a whole support infrastructure there in place now. We continue to work very closely, again, between BPHC and BPS to think ahead and watch the data. And we are using a targeted approach this year, which has gone pretty well. We've been watching not only COVID data numbers and metrics, but also attendance and other school metrics. And we have not seen a dip in attendance when COVID numbers are going up. And so we believe that the policies are working and that the policy of when there is any issue to be concerned about in a classroom or a school, there's a requirement for masking in that classroom or school. And for now, that's the approach that we'll take, although we continue to try to be a couple steps ahead as the pandemic or the impacts of the pandemic continue to be with us.
Yeah, are you keeping an eye? I assume we talked at the top of the show with listeners about places like LA and New York City urging people indoors these days to be wearing masks, two biggest cities in America. Are you following that? And are we anywhere near reaching that point?
Yeah, Dr. Ojikutu and the Boston Public Health Commission continue to offer guidance, and we know that this is still, in some ways, territory that we're in a bit of a transition from full-on in the height of the pandemic to constantly living with COVID and working with the public to ensure that people know the best guidance that's available.
Let's return to schools for a moment. We have a young man at the microphone here at the Boston Public Library. If you'd step up and share who you are and your question.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Miss Wu. My name is Tor Woods.
Tor Woods, okay.
This isn't my question, and I had to say it. Where can we find your grandmother's cakes?
Oh, no, I wish. Okay, so it's literally, the brand name is called My Grandma's of New England.
Okay. There we go. All right.
This has been
That was a good one, Tara. That was a good one.
They're based in Hyde Park, but for the longest time, I thought it was someone I knew's grandma, too.
Yeah. All right. It's ironic that somebody called about Boston Public Schools, and my question is related to that as well. I know you guys have a nice, financial budget for a BPS system, and I was wondering if you was going to build any new facilities that would make school more engaging, enhancing the numbers in the extracurriculum activity.
And are you thinking about facilities for extracurriculars in particular, or school facilities?
Initially, yes, most definitely extracurriculum activity facilities, like enhancing the sports and the engagement of the students. But, they kind of all go into each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Tor, for being here and for your question.
Thank you.
I've spent a lot of time over this last year. I tried to at least once a week, do something in a school and listen to our young people, our educators, school nurses. And one thing that came up over and over again in those conversations was that so much was shifted to emergency response during the pandemic that a lot of what we sometimes call extra, even though they're just as necessary, supports around that fell off during the last few years. Extracurriculars, organizations that used to be there that our students could count on and rely on just either shifted or didn't have enough resources or couldn't get the supports anymore because everyone was focused on COVID. And so we've really tried to focus on rebuilding a lot of that infrastructure in different ways. One bit of really exciting news is that we're finally moving forward with a community center in Grove Hall. This has been a dream of the community for decades and decades, and to do it on a site that is right centrally located and right where community members advocated will be really special. We're trying to move that. I think it's on a 3 to 4 year timeline to get fully built. We're also really accelerating our school facilities. Madison Park right at the top of the agenda, and making sure that as we think about how to put we've put $2 billion on the table to renovate many of our schools. We want this to touch every single neighborhood and recognize that schools aren't just about the classroom and the principal's office, but the whole space for what happens after school is out and all the extracurriculars that should go there.
Mayor Wu, would you be offended if I were to give Tur my grandmother's cake and I'll split Jared's with him? Tur, get over here. Come here. You better thank me for this, baby. Let me tell you right now. Enjoy it. They're great. Thank you.
He's holding it up for a nice photo.
Can we stay on schools? Your mouth was already open. You want to say something first?
Well, I was also going to stay on schools in the matter of school committees. And you were not necessarily on board with the idea of the elected school committee, and people want to know that that's something you campaigned on a year later. Where do you land on this?
Yeah, I and almost every other candidate in the mayoral race campaigned on not moving to a fully elected school committee. I think at the time, and now having had a year under the hood, I believe very strongly that having accountability directly to the administration is really important. And particularly in this moment, when we still have the needs from pandemic impacts, when we are still working through implementation of many of the new collaborative plan with the state around special education, inclusion, fully changing our inclusion system, looking to rebuild school facilities, think about social emotional supports. There's a lot that our new superintendent is running with and building her team and doing. The most important thing for the district right now is stability. We haven't had that in a very long time. We were just celebrating the topping off ceremony for the new Josiah Quincy Upper School in Chinatown, watching the last 2 beams get risen up, and someone commented that that project had to get from where it started to where we marked the ceremony a couple days ago, 7 superintendents, 4 mayors, and a whole lot of school committee members in between. And so we vowed that we wanted to do a lot more under 1 superintendent and 1 mayor, but I don't believe that this is a moment to change the governance structure.
You know, did you read the Globe editorial on this topic in the last couple of days?
I did.
You did. And you used the words, Mayor Wu, about direct accountability. The Globe has not authorized me to speak for them, but I think the editorial board would say, if you believe in direct accountability, then abolish the school committee, and everybody in Boston will know where the buck stops. It stops with you. Why is that not the essence of direct accountability?
We have a system now where the mayor appoints the members, and so therefore there is a direct degree of accountability and ensuring that everyone is on the same page. You know, we again are, I've been speaking about this all morning in different conversations that I've had. We were just at Franklin Park, and there was a conversation about the Shattuck and why the Shattuck is the way it is, because the city and state had come to an agreement years and years before. We're in a place where we are not working from scratch, and if you were working from scratch, there might be questions about why schools are treated so differently from other parts of city government and the infrastructure. Now, it's the largest part of our budget. It is a core focus, but we need to have clear decision-making, a plan, a vision, and ensure that, as with every other issue, that community feedback is driving where we're headed. And so we can't have it that the only time that we have community feedback or the public engaged is if there is an elected school committee, right? That should be true no matter what we're doing, and we have a lot of work to do to keep going further on that. But I do believe that we are making good ground, and with Superintendent Skipper and the incredible school committee members that we have now, there's a lot of institutional knowledge that is being put to work every single day.
So, Mayor, I met John this morning at 9:30, who's at the microphone now, and I urged John, because he had a question for you to return when you were here, and here he is. John, welcome. I'm glad you stayed.
Hi. Thank you. Hi, Mayor.
Hello.
I was at your office just the day before yesterday. I've been homeless and out in the street for 5 months, and I went to your City Hall on a few occasions, saying I'm out in the street sleeping in subway stations for warmth, and people just tell me, well, all we have for you, Mr. Ployer, is a list of shelters. Even though I've been beat up in shelters for defending my clothing from being stolen and brought to the hospital on a couple occasions, one time very badly beaten, and maybe have a sense of humor, but as you said, this is all we have for you, Mr. Ployer, is a list of shelters. And the only shelter that was available at the time was Mass and Cass. And I went down there, I couldn't handle it. I had to walk back out. I was so nervous, paranoid, Your Honor, and I'm still in the situation right now where I'm homeless. I'm staying in a shelter in Cambridge at the basement of a church with another person, and other people steal my items while I'm out of the building. And I have a social worker from the counter I think it's Elder Agency, and she says she's trying to get me help, which is okay, that's fine. But I've been a car agent, elderly service before, and I'm eligible, I told him. I says, geez, I'm 81 years old, I'm in a bad situation, you're helping everybody else. People are getting homes now. And I signed up months ago, and I'm being refused.
John, I think you made your point quite
Thank you.
eloquently.
Thank you,
Don't
John.
go away. Let's have the mayor respond. Please stay, if you would.
So first, thank you for being here to share your story and being so incredibly inspiring in how you're right at it and continuing to advocate. There are many, many, many people who share stories and pieces of their experience just like yours. And so putting this out in the public helps them a lot too. And what I want to say is, first of all, I want to make sure that we can get connected with you and get your contact information and just ensure that we're doing all that we can. Maybe your social worker has it covered already and already knows, unfortunately, overall, we have a problem with housing in the city and the state right now, and it spills over into every other way, but one way is that everything gets crowded and then crowded and crowded, and then people are left with really impossible choices to make. One thing I want to just say, though, is that what you mentioned about shelters, not necessarily all feeling safe, and the experiences that you've had there, other people have highlighted this too, which is why we've really pushed to work with many of the shelter providers over this last year to change how they do things as well. So I don't know how long ago that experience occurred for you. It never should have happened, and I'm really sorry that it did happen. But we want to make sure that that doesn't happen for other people. So having property that you can have a place to keep your belongings in shelter, having more privacy within shelter, that is something that we've been working to change within a lot of the existing sites. So they might be a little different than last time you experienced it as well. Again, not that we want, the solution is that everyone should get to the place where they have a permanent home that's all yours. But I just want to make a note that that has come up, and we've been working on that as well. So let us get your contact information, and we will do what we can. We really need help from the state and from everyone who has resources, because if we keep going how we are with housing, it won't be enough to have a job, to be doing everything right. It's the price, what you have to be making to keep up is out of reach for far too many, and so we want to make it possible again.
John, please talk to Annie, our coworker, and Annie will connect you with the appropriate people. And we really appreciate you staying and speaking to the mayor, John. Lots of luck. Before we take a break, speaking of housing, the headline in a Globe story, I think it was yesterday, the day before, whatever it was, several days ago, City Council urges WU, that'd be you, to go big on affordable housing requirements. I think it was about this inclusionary zoning thing, that a certain percentage of new developments be set aside for low and middle income people. And the number currently, I think, is 13%. They want to see it at 20. I believe you as a campaigner were at 20%. How do we get from the 13 to the 20, which is a huge, huge increase and an important one, I'd say?
Yep, and there is another component of it, which is what threshold is the trigger to this applying. So right now...
You mean income threshold?
Number of units of housing.
I see,
So right
I'm
now
sorry.
it only applies if you are building 10 units or more, then 13% have to be affordable in terms of residential buildings. And then there's a separate program for commercial buildings to feed in through linkage payments to our neighborhood housing trust and affordable and neighborhood jobs trust. But we have spent the last couple months working with an independent researcher and expert on this to go out in the community and analyze the economic situations, to test out the feasibility of a bunch of different scenarios. Again, different trigger thresholds of number of units, different percentages. The economy is changing quickly right now, and so we are in a different place now versus a year ago or 2 years ago. And we want to hit the right balance of grabbing all the resources for affordability that we possibly can to make sure that we don't have more people falling through the cracks through no fault of their own because of the housing system, and that we are continuing to empower and enable the housing market to keep adding units, because supply is a really important part of that.
Well, we are speaking with Boston Mayor Michelle Wu. She is here for the next half hour, taking your calls, texts, and questions here at the Boston Public Library. We'll return in a moment. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
there's a chance Tobias Jesso Jr. has written your favorite pop song. He's worked with artists like Adele, Harry Styles, and FKA Twigs.
It's unbelievable to me that here I am working with these artists. I feel like I'm in the documentaries I used to watch.
I'm Ari Shapiro. How a choice to stay out of the spotlight could win Tobias Jesso Jr. a Grammy this afternoon on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Sunbug Solar, a full-service local solar energy company helping to grow renewable energy in Massachusetts since 2009. To learn more about current solar energy employment opportunities, visit sunbugsolar.com. And Heights Crossing, an assisted living community offering residents experiences aimed at promoting independence, inspiring curiosity, and encouraging connection with others. More at heightscrossing.com/enrich.
You depend on GBH Radio to bring you quality, fact-based journalism day in and day out. And GBH depends on you, too. So the best way to support your listening is by becoming a GBH sustainer. And your membership stays active as long as you like. So you can rest easy knowing that you're always doing your part to keep GBH Radio running strong. Learn more at gbh.org/sustainer.
Trusted, local, news. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I am Jim Browdy. Jared Bowen sitting in for Marjorie. Marjorie's got COVID. We hope she'll be back at least on Zoom tomorrow. We'll find out later today. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined by Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, kind enough to give us an hour for Ask the Mayor. She's here for another 24 minutes and available to you at 877-301-8970.
Mayor Wu, I want to return to something that John, the homeless gentleman who was just here, spoke about, which was here's a man in need of shelter, and goes to Mass and Cass into that shelter and turned around because he didn't find it a hospitable place for him. Obviously, this is an issue that is really confronting the city and state government in major ways. When's the last time you were there? And now, as you said, when you're talking about the Boston schools, now that you're looking under the hood, what do you see and how do you plan to further address this problem that is still very much present in that part of the city?
Yeah, I try to find time to be there every single week, whether it is a quick survey of the conditions or a ride along with our public works crews, or trying to find time to just check in on some of the staff who are there on the ground. We know from having conversations and administering surveys and trying to collect data that this is a challenge that is bigger than Boston. There are multiple systems that have failed here, and there are three kind of buckets that many people fall into who are currently unhoused at Mass and Cass. One large shared experience is of recent incarceration. And so we know that the reentry process, all that people work through as they are thinking about job training and preparation to return to communities, housing is a piece where it falls off. And so being able to smooth that transition would make a big difference, for example, to people's experiences. A second bucket is around a recent residential detox or recovery experience. And again, you put yourself through so much effort to get on a good pathway, and then once that program ends, there's not a warm transition or handoff to a stable housing location. And then the third bucket is people who have been receiving treatment from the Department of Mental Health, DMH. Again, state services have been sought out, connected, and we are always looking to reconnect people to those systems. But sometimes if we can just tighten up those connections in direct partnership with the state, a lot would be resolved on its own. We are not necessarily asking for X number of dollars more from the state to address this situation in Boston. We believe that the solution is for the state to invest this funding in communities all across the Commonwealth to replicate what we know works, the programs that have been transformational, so people like John don't have to just wait on it find their way to Boston, get on a wait list in Boston as the only way to get treatment. We know this is possible, and that the state and the city, when we get on the same page, can do really big things, from addressing the Orange Line shutdown and transportation infrastructure to now, I believe, very effective and proactive response when it comes to serving migrant families who are continuing to arrive in Massachusetts as well. Fort Devens is being opened up, and there are other locations that are being immediately identified for migrant families to receive services in a short-term way and then transition into the larger state systems. We need that same level of commitment and responsibility when it comes to Mass and Cass and our larger opiate crisis as a statewide issue.
Before you go, Tori Bedford, our colleague, did some reporting from down there and interviewed some people from the National Association of Social Workers who were critical of your decision to spend more money on police overtime, where their contention was, and I believe I'm accurately reflecting this, such limited dollars are far better spent on a whole variety of services like what you're describing, rather than more of a police presence. What do you say to her?
Well, unfortunately, it's a complex situation that we have not been hitting the right balance in for a number of years in terms of the ecosystem of how all the pieces fit together. And it's not an either-or decision in this case, where no one's consciously said we're going to put funding here versus here. It's really been all hands on deck, and our coordinated response team, which meets every day at 8:45 across 12 different agencies, they're working in concert, and we have been finding the resources to do what they need to do, rather than saying, here's our budget, how do we allocate it between very different places. Everything is working in concert. And the presence of Boston Police on the ground has been not only very important for our ability to continue to enforce the law, particularly around drug trafficking, around human trafficking. We have seen the safety situation there much, much better, right? I hate to reference constantly where we were a year ago, but there were multiple homicides that had taken place. There were constant fights that were breaking out, fires that were happening, diseases because of a rodent issue. It is, again, a very, very different situation. We solved a large part of it. The last chunk is very, very difficult, but it's been absolutely necessary as well for all of our other team members. Our public health outreach workers, our community partners have said, we need to feel safe doing our work here at Mass and Cass as well. And so BPD's presence has been through their street outreach unit, who know the individuals at Mass and Cass on a first name basis. They are experts in how all the pieces fit together between public health, public safety, community outreach, and their presence has been critical for the safety of our workers who are doing the other pieces of this as well.
Let's return to our callers and go to Roy calling from Jamaica Plain. Hi, Roy.
Hi, Roy.
Good afternoon. Good day.
Hi.
Hello.
You got to turn your radio down, Roy, if you haven't, please.
I did.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I must say, greetings. Miss Wu, Mrs. Wu, I commend you into being who you are in the position where you are at, and the works that you have done. 1 second, please. Mr. Browdy.
Hello.
Bless you, sir.
Thank you.
I've been listening to WGBH for many, many years, with Eric as well this morning. I hope Ms. Egan gets together with this COVID thing.
You're really a kind soul, Roy. Do you have a question for the mayor?
Yes, I'm calling because I'm being evicted, and I'm under an organization at Pine Street Inn. I need some kind of assistance of helping myself into proceeding into not being evicted. And on top of that, I want to also commend you, Ms. Wu, into your works into cleaning up Mass and Cass.
Thank you, Roy.
We people know, because you have done so much in a little bit of time, especially with the locking down the Orange Line and then getting back up together. I commend you.
Hey, Roy, can I interrupt you for a second, only because we want the mayor to address your issue? Just to be clear, you're asking, no, you don't have to apologize. You're asking if there is a way you can get legal representation. I believe that's
Yes.
your question. Yeah.
Yes,
Mayor,
for eviction.
we got it. In an eviction proceeding.
Numbers.
So Roy, if you can stay on after this, and we can get your information from the producers. Our Office of Housing Stability was set up specifically to make sure that people know all of their rights and have supports and resources to try and stay in their homes wherever legally possible. And so we'd love to connect to understand your specific case a little bit more and what the possibilities are.
Roy, do not hang up. Stay on the line, and we'll get your phone number and contact info and convey it to the mayor's office. You know, on a related theme, I don't know if you know, we're doing a series. Stephanie Lydon is running it on GBH called Priced Out, about the housing crisis, which I know you're obsessed with. And we had a woman on yesterday who's also at risk of eviction, Frances Amador, who's a tenant in East Boston, has lived in the same apartment. She's 38 now, since she was 13. She became an activist in the middle of this. She works for City Life Vida Urbana. And she was talking about how, I was a tenant lawyer when I was a kid in New York City in the South Bronx. I wasn't aware of this. She said there is a right to counsel law that was passed in New York City, which guarantees that if you're a tenant facing eviction and you can't afford a lawyer, you'll be provided a lawyer, even if there are not enough traditional legal services types. Is that something that you have contemplated here?
Absolutely. We need to ensure that tenant protections are unfortunately a key part of trying to mitigate the impacts of the displacement crisis and housing prices. In Boston, we are a little bit bound because many of the changes that we would need require state approval. And so I know this is something that's been up at the state in different forms over many years, whether it is a right to counsel or tenant opportunity to purchase or other proposals that we've put forward that would just help people be stabilized in their homes a little bit. The equivalent, I think what we've been trying to do at the city level and strengthen is there are certain provisions where if you're in the middle of a potential condo conversion, which is where we saw a lot of displacements over years past, there are protections that are in place over a period of time or resources that have to be given. But this is an example where we would need to partner with the state and keep going.
But you support the concept, obviously.
We know that it makes a difference, whether it is in evictions proceedings or whether it is in immigration proceedings. The statistics are so clear when someone is represented and has a lawyer versus when they are not. All else being the same, it makes a huge difference.
I do have an arts-related question, arts question for you, but first we have another questioner here at the Boston Public Library. It's Rosemarie. Thank you, Rosemarie.
Hi.
Hi, Mayor Wu. Thank you for being here today. I know that you're constantly trying to fix things, limited resources, all these constraints. So my question is the opposite. If you got a windfall of $1 billion and the city council said, you can do whatever you want with it, we won't get in the way, what would you do?
$1 billion. I was going to say I would immediately try to fix every single one of our school buildings. It's going to take a little bit more than $1 billion, unfortunately, but it would be added to that. I think in some ways we have tried our best over the course of having an unprecedented, you could call it a mini windfall from the federal pandemic recovery funds to lay out the key criteria, the key priorities of the city. And we probably would expand on what's already been allocated that way with partnership from the city council. I would say what keeps me up at night is the state of our school buildings, mass and CAS, and our transportation system in terms of things that I feel like we could put more resources in and solve with a little bit more elbow grease. But from mental health to early education to arts and culture, housing and upping down payment assistance for residents, we've laid out a number of different buckets where the city has unprecedented funding, and we want to document all the impacts that result from that so we can then go back and make the case for sustained revenues to be able to fund that going forward.
Rosemarie, thank you very much. Can I bring up something we have in Cambridge that I think you're trying to implement here, participatory budgeting? Can you describe what I voted on Sunday as a resident of Cambridge to spend $250,000 on 2 chargers of EVs, and we essentially get to vote to spend $1 million, which is a really great thing. What are you trying to do here?
So the idea is that the city's budget is not only our financial document, it is really the city's plan and priorities for the year forward, the expression of our values and the guiding document for all of our programming. For many years now, Boston has had a participatory budgeting program that's been limited to $1 million for our Mayor's Youth Council and young people to help allocate between different priorities that are put forward. The lovely bird.
We have a bird in the studio.
Oh they heard there was my grandma's here. And so by the changes in the city charter over the 2021 election, there's now a requirement that the city broaden this participatory budgeting program so that everyone from every generation can help weigh in directly on the city's budget, take proposals, and then help us make the decision for how to spend taxpayers' funding to have the greatest benefit for our neighborhoods.
And when is that going to be in place, or is it in place?
There's the first step. Well, now that the charter change has been implemented, the next step is to ensure that there's a mechanism to guide how this office is created. So we've put forward an ordinance in partnership with many of our advocates and city councilors who've been really active on this issue. They'll work through the process of finalizing what the details are and what the parameters are, and then we hope to have it up and running for the next budget cycle after that.
Marie in Boston, you're on Boston Public Radio with Mayor Michelle Wu. Welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Mayor Wu, I am interested in moving into the downtown Boston area, and I've read that you're looking at making more residential housing in that area and sort of the business district. The only thing is that I'm in sales, so I have a car, and there's no residential parking there. Is that something that if you develop more housing there, that you'll put some residential spaces into the downtown area?
It's a really good question and one that is quite tricky. So I don't know that I can say yes to that question, because as much as we are currently locked in a system where many things feel out of reach or much harder without a vehicle, and again, getting 2 kids, going to the grocery store, this or that, our aim is that in parts of the city where we can allocate street space in a way that empowers more people to move on our streets, that has to be the priority, because traffic is just choking off so much of what we do. And so we are actually looking to move away from parking minimums for buildings, and particularly in areas where there's more density, like downtown, and more proximity to public transit and other amenities. Our goal is that every neighborhood would, within a call it 15-minute, call it small walkable distance, have access to everything that you need with public transportation and many multimodal options, bike, walk, connecting all of those hubs together. We want to be a space, of course, no one is saying that we're, banning cars or eliminating people's ability to use a vehicle. We're talking about trying to find the margins where if we make it possible for even 5% of car owners to have a choice and to be able to reliably count on using the T or riding a bike to where they need to go, that will transform the experience of traffic across the entire city. So we don't need to change that much to free up space. And so I see our responsibility in terms of thinking about development of buildings and street space as really the top priority has to be easing traffic, bringing affordability, and ensuring that everybody can continue to stay and afford to be in Boston.
Marie, thanks for your call. We really appreciate it.
So going to the arts for a moment, when we last spoke about this, we talked in your office where you also played the piano. Arts, it's fundamental to who you are in recognizing that it's a reflection of society. We need it as a culture, but also it is an economic engine. Since we spoke, Arts Boston has done a number of surveys looking at the vitality and health, and it's grim. According to their last result, for the performing arts at least, attendance is down as much as 40% in some cases. There's deep concern in this community about how the arts, and the performing arts in particular, will survive and move beyond the pandemic. What's the city's role in this, looking at where it stands right now?
Yeah, and here again is an example of many of the issues that we've been talking about: housing, transportation, downtown's function, all tie into what the ecosystem is that the arts can either thrive or struggle to survive within. We have put more resources than we've ever had before towards arts with the pandemic allocation. And so there is a chunk of funding there that is going to initiatives like stabilizing the Humphrey Street Studios, a collection of artists who were on the verge of being displaced from long held studios, precious studio space. And so being able to use some of the city's dollars to work and support acquisition of that space by the artists themselves with a new structure that will enable them to permanently keep that space as arts creative space. That is what we need to replicate all across the city. We're really looking to integrate arts into the planning of certain neighborhood master plans that are happening now, whether it's in the Alston area where an arts corridor and arts district has been proposed. I know when, the District 7 on the City Council, winding through South End, Roxbury, is really committed to ensuring that there's a District 7 arts corridor there as well. But we hear the same issues that we've been talking about today, artists are getting squeezed out of the city from as well. If we don't reliably have a place for people to afford to live, if people can't count on taking the T to get to a show because you don't know if it's going to be a 6-minute wait or a 25-minute wait for the next train, it spills over into traffic and makes it impossible. And so we are trying to ensure every tool that we have is around bringing affordability, making affordability more expansive everywhere across the city, and really highlighting arts as a key economic strategy for our recovery from the pandemic.
We have another question from the studio audience. I believe the person's name is Susan. Is that correct?
Yes.
You're on with the mayor.
Mayor, my name is Susan Goldberg. I'm the new president and CEO of GBH.
Welcome. We're so excited for your leadership.
So I just moved to Boston 2 weeks ago, and I am, really new to the city. I haven't spent a lot of time here yet. What is the one thing I can do to get a real flavor of the real Boston?
Well, I would
come to
say,
Boston Public Radio at the Boston Public Library. Are you kidding me?
You're in a pretty good spot for that in the middle of our public library, which is home to so many. Here's a couple things to know about Boston. One, as someone who was born in the Midwest, who came here and felt a little bit shocked that my friendly smiles weren't being returned on the T, and it took a while to get used to. But Bostonians are the most fiercely loving people you will find. It just comes under sometimes a veneer of toughness and grit. But once you're in the city, you will be protected from all sides. And this is an institution that we are so proud to have in our city. So I know people will be very excited to get to know you and welcome you to all of their different organizations and events. This is a really special time of year where many of the beloved traditions are a slice of the entirety of our city. We have events, holiday events like the Pops and the Nutcracker, to Black Nativity, to First Night coming up. These are all traditions where if you get to know the history of how they came to be and spend a little time there, you'll very quickly get a sense of just how much people are committed to keeping this city, keeping tradition alive, but also making sure it's welcoming for the next generation. We're so excited that you're here.
Well, thank you so much for that great advice. I will do all of those things.
Susan, thank you for your question. So, Mayor Wu, every time you're here, I say, how many days do you have left in office?
1411, I believe.
Is that what it is?
Yes, let me just double check.
Are you ridiculed for this?
No. Oh, my goodness.
How many left?
It's 1114.
You better
That's
move
very
it, if
different.
you know
That's a
what
whole
I mean.
year less than I thought.
1114. We learned a few months ago that you keep counting your phone about how many days left till your term is over. Is that not correct?
That is the goal, that every day has to count, and we will make the most use of the time that we have.
Can I read it? We've ignored the text, and my apologies to them. Can Mayor Wu talk about her plan to address affordable child care? Child care in Boston is some of the most expensive in the country, making it too expensive for working parents to afford. How is she making it possible for parents to stay in the city and get the support they need for their children? It's unsigned, but thank you for the question.
Yeah, this is really important. Our Office of Early Childhood, which was created just for this purpose, has already been moving and shaking. One is that we have helped use some of the funding that's been available to partner with organizations and unlock the spaces that are currently being underused. We realized that because the funding previously had mostly been given by seats, by the number of children individual children enrolled rather than by classrooms. Sometimes organizations weren't opening up that next classroom because you have to pay for the same teachers, whether it's a fully full classroom or 2/3 full classroom. And so we changed that funding formula, and that's already opened up spaces in Boston Chinatown Neighborhood Center and others where they had said we had a classroom available, but we didn't have the funding until we restructured this. Most recently, we announced that the city is partnering with 4 of our community partners. I'm not going to miss one of them. I know Urban College, Bunker Hill Community College. But okay, anyway, I'm so sorry. Someone will send me a note with it. To ensure that we are creating a workforce development pipeline where providers, potential providers, can get credentialed, will get their degrees and ensure that they can move on to open their own business or be certified with the many complicated licensing requirements free of charge because their tuition will be paid for, and they will then be committed to staying in a Boston-based organization for a number of years after that. This will allow our providers to enter the workforce debt-free and start to even out the huge disparities that exist for a largely women of color workforce. That's a key component to this as well.
Before you go, how many trees are you going to light between now and Christmas
I
Day?
think we've already done 30-some. I think we're moving to menorahs next.
With many...
Yes.
Okay, keep counting. You'll tell. The birds flying around the suit. Mayor Wu, we can't thank you enough for your time. As always, thank you for the beautiful grandma's cakes, and thank you for spending an hour with us and our audience. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Happy holiday, Merry Christmas, and all those things.
Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, thank you, and we'll see you in January. Coming up next, comedian Chris Fleming joins us at the Boston Public Library ahead of his show at the Wilbur this weekend. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
You depend on GBH Radio to bring you quality, fact-based journalism day in and day out. And GBH depends on you, too. So the best way to support your listening is by becoming a GBH sustainer. And your membership stays active as long as you like. So you can rest easy knowing that you're always doing your part to keep GBH Radio running strong. Learn more at gbh.org/sustainer.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And City Year. Dedicated to helping students reach their full potential, City Year places AmeriCorps mentors in public school classrooms to support students academically and socially. You can learn more at cityyear.org. And Chevalier Theater in Medford Square, presenting Il Divo, a New Day tour, with guest vocalist Stephen Labrie, March 1st at 8 p.m. Tickets and more information are available at chevaliertheater.com. And the Addison Gallery of American Art in Andover, presenting Rosamund Purcell, Nature Stands Aside. The artist's first retrospective shows her career from the 60s to today, now through December 31st. AddisonGallery.org. And Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. You can make a difference for our ocean, planet, and future with a career in ocean science, engineering, fundraising, and more. Now hiring at whoi.edu/team.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Jared Bowen sitting in for Marjorie, who's got COVID. We hear she's doing pretty well. Hopefully she'll be back on Zoom tomorrow. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. This is a hell of a transition here. We're now joined by comedian Chris Fleming. He's a local kid, by the way, ahead of a performance at the Great Wilbur Theater this weekend. The last time Chris was on this show, he decided to take advantage of the fact that I was not here that day. And how should I put this? He essentially exposed me. Here's what he had to say.
Radio Jim is so different from TV Jim. Radio Jim, when I came in, he's like in short shorts. He's got like an open Tommy Bahama shirt. He's got like O'Doul's and he's drinking Kahlua and like maybe like a machete. And like, he's just a fun guy. And then you talk to him at night and he is a total narc on TV. You know, like he's suit buttoned up to here. And he puts you in the hot seat, like questions like that. What is my comedy? I don't know.
Well, despite that, he is with us now. Chris Fleming, it's great to see you again. How are you?
Jim, I'm sorry I spoke of you like that behind your back.
No, you're not. But thank you. We're glad to see you anyway.
This is a very good power way to assert dominance over me. The mayor was upright, and I am here kind of sitting down.
That's exactly our intention.
It almost feels like a dystopian sci-fi court system.
That's exactly what we aim for at NPR, actually. That's our North Star vision. You just named it to a T. So let's just start.
I also just came from a morning radio show.
I guess we're not going to start.
On KISS 108.
You did?
So this is like the opposite of do you want to go to a real party in Titanic? You know, like it's like going from like the Irish party to like the dinner. Like this is so legit. This cafe in the
it's pretty
Boston
nice
Public
though, is
Library.
it not?
It's so nice.
It's great to see you.
It's really great to be here.
So, well, we get a sense of who you are by how you just described Jim. I mean, you were spot on there, but how do you describe yourself and what you do on the stage and in person?
I try to avoid describing myself. I'm more of a show versus tell. I come from the theater world, and so I try to embody it instead of describe it. But I would call it, acrobatic. My stage work, very specific. I've been told, and I blast. I think you would enjoy it, Jared. Have you come? You should come this weekend to the Wilbur.
Well, it's this weekend, and there's only one show available, so. You're doing well.
Yes, the late night show.
Yeah, the late night show.
But YouTube all over the place. Speaking of YouTube, but I know you saw this little encounter between Dave Chappelle and Elon Musk, one of our favorites, Elon, when he invited Elon Musk up onto the stage at a show he was doing. Here's a little bit of that sound from that moment. Here it is.
Cheers and booze, I say. Elon.
Now, Elon Musk said it was 90% cheers. That is total BS. What was your reaction to this coming together of Chappelle and Musk there, Chris Fleming?
Well, I don't know what Elon expected, just to go up on stage and just smoke cigarettes with him and get a raucous ovation after being kind of, well, first of all, having no training in stand-up comedy, and then also being a bit of a bigot on Twitter, and then also, he's all arms also, both those
Musk
guys.
Musk is? What do you mean by that?
Well, they just do bicep curls and just.
What does that say to you about a person when they do that?
That they're probably running from something. Ooh. Yeah, and that they're they're neglecting the rest. I think you got to do cardio if you're also going to do that.
Did your shrink tell you that, or that was out of your own head? Your shrink did tell you that.
One of my
shrinks.
Why
did shrinks tell you that? Okay,
yeah,
fine.
They're around the clock. Yeah,
I got it.
No, but I think that it's nice to see the reaction in real time. I mean, you can't. First of all, just being the wealthiest person on earth on a stand-up stage just doesn't really mesh very well, but also being bigoted and kind of,
Well, speaking of reacting in real time, your audience is very vocal. You invite that. How much of your show is very deliberate versus how much is organic every night because you are having these conversations with the audience in the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I try. My audience is very nice. It's a lot of nearsighted people, like a lot of nearsighted queer people coming out to my shows, and so it's a very gentle crowd. Occasionally there's drunk people, and I try not to kind of encourage conversations with those people. But other than that, if I'm feeling like, it's nice to kind of have a rolling thing going on, keep it fresh.
Can I give you a little advice about how to market yourself?
Oh, please.
You have a show at the Wilbur on Saturday, is that correct?
Yes, first show sold out, late night show still.
Okay, where is that show? What city is that in?
Boston, Massachusetts.
Okay, so here, pretend I'm you. Okay. By the way, Jared and Jim, it's great to be here. Thank you so much. I'm from Stowe, Massachusetts, and I went to Neshoba Regional, whatever the hell it is. You make a bond with people local. Try that, by the way.
Jared, Jim, I'm from Stowe, Massachusetts.
You are?
Yes. I went to Neshoba Regional High School.
How was that?
Oh, it was incredible.
How so?
I miss it. I mean, I'm a nostalgia freak. I love going back and playing the songs that take me back to that.
Like what, for example?
A Gypsy by Stevie Nicks really takes me back.
That's she's no longer, as you know. Oh no, the other one. Whoops.
No,
Excuse me.
I thought you were breaking.
Sorry about that. I forgot it was the other one.
Yeah, but Lindsay McVie. Oh, Christine McVie.
Christine McVie.
Sorry, yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
Yes.
Lindsey Buckingham.
He's doing fine.
He's still fine as far as we
fine.
know.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you're at the Wilbur on Saturday? If people haven't seen you, and I am somewhat obsessed with your videos, I must admit, as are zillions of other people.
I love when you drop. I forget this, and because you're coquettish. You know, you.
I am. I try to be coquettish. Thank you for that.
When that bird came in.
What do you exactly do at the Wilbur Theater at that second show that is not sold out, Chris Fleming? What do you do?
Well, I do stand-up comedy, and so a lot of it is based on, I do speak about growing up in Massachusetts, my Irish Catholic background, how we're opposed to introspection, how I started finally looking under the hood in spite of all my ancestors screaming at me to not.
It's true.
Just make it to 80 and scream at night every night, but never, look inwards. I talk a lot about that. There's some song and dance. There's crowd interaction, and the whole show is going to be a special that's filmed next year for 2023.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So if people come in the audience, they might be in the deal.
Well, they won't. It'll be shot in Los Angeles, but they will get the skeleton of.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Speaking of songs, one of my favorite songs of yours was about your tax preparer. What's the name of your tax preparer?
Sick Jan.
Sick Jan. Are you still going to Sick Jan or no?
No, she quit in 2015.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
Oh, could you tell people about Sick Jan if you don't mind?
Well, Sick Jan was kind of this nihilist. She was a desert woman, and she had head to toe in turquoise, and she was always trying to encourage me to claim a home office, even though it was kind of illegitimate. And she was, the song is basically her saying she's willing to go to jail with me. She wanted...
It's my kind of tax preparer.
She was ready for the IRS to drop kick our doors down and take us both away. And it was kind of romantic in the poetic sense. So yeah, that was the song.
Okay, so where do you find your inspiration for your people? How much of them come from home? I mean, we just got your description on top of how Mayor Wu just described Bostonians and our tough veneer and what lies beneath.
I liked how she said that we're always defended. It was slightly mafia.
What'd she say?
She said, no matter what, you're always going to be protected here.
Yeah,
and I was like, ooh.
A little bit of that, yeah.
Do you guys ever interview the mafia on here, Jim?
As a matter of fact, we have a number of Whitey Bulgers, number 2s and 3s have been on the show in past years.
I was interviewing Kevin Weeks at one point, who was one of his lieutenants, and this is after things were over for him, and our interview was interrupted by his phone going off, and his phone ringtone was the theme song to The Sopranos.
Is that true?
Not
you never
making
told
this
me that.
up.
That is great.
Yeah.
That's bold.
Yeah, it was bold. Sitting on a park bench or bleachers in South Boston. Yeah.
Wow.
But what was the question to which you asked that question?
We were talking about Bostonians and where your inspiration comes from,
and
how much of home is in what we see on stage.
Oh, quite a bit, because it is a little bit of an because as you see here, I'm dressed like George Michael's wife in the last Christmas music video, and so there is a bit of an exploration of how this came to be in such a... Well, what's interesting about Massachusetts, it's very... like you guys, very liberal, but it's also socially quite conservative. Like here, wearing this on the street is like in Los Angeles, you get ignored, but here, you meet the mayor.
Yeah. That's right.
Speaking of you marketing yourself, not that you need it, but I'm going to give you a little more advice.
It sounds like you're leaving radio to pivot to be my PR person.
Maybe I am. Depends on whether
kind of cute.
What kind of remuneration there is. You obviously have an obsession with what we do, which is public radio, as evidenced by who Gail Waters' kids and relatives. Could you explain a little bit? Now, Gail is missed by a lot of people. By the way, why'd you end that thing?
It's actually my mom recommended. We were talking about it, and she was like, if you keep doing this, it's all you're going to be known as, is this one character. And so I stopped doing it. And
that's total BS. I mean, that's total crap. If you're wildly popular and people love some, you do it until there's nothing left in it. You're not like Jerry Seinfeld. I mean, quitting the whatever. I'm serious.
I mean, yeah, I might return to it. I do love the character. She was, so she's she had 2 children named after NPR, Ira Glass, Waters, and Terry Gross
Waters, exactly.
Yeah, a son and a daughter.
So were you an NPR kid when you were growing up?
My mom would play it at like college party volumes, like where you're like people driving by. It's like noise complaint. Like you hear it bump and the house is just like, up next we're here with Terry Grubb. We're here with Mike Myers. I can't think of who she would have on.
I got you. No, you made the point.
Well, when did Gail go away? What was the time frame? Was it pre-pandemic?
Like 7 or 8 years ago, right?
I like when did she go away? It's very childlike. When did she go away?
Well, we're gentle people here.
Yeah, it's sweet. 2015.
But aren't you dying to know? Aren't we all dying to know how she would have survived the pandemic?
Well, that's a great question.
Yeah, violently.
Well, we haven't explained who she is yet. Really, she's a very intense woman.
Can you explain her?
No.
I am so bad at explaining things that I do.
Well, she's a very...
No, you're doing. You explain quite well.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's a power walking woman. Started off as a stand-up character, kind of this archetypal adult that I would see in my community, power walking in snow, rain, or sleet, very intense. But the more I did it, the more I loved her and saw like it was all fear-based. And I kind of, whenever people are like, she was crazy, I'm like, no, she wasn't. She was doing what she had to do.
She was very intent and productive in her home, and that's what makes me wonder how she would survive the pandemic and what she did to survive the pandemic.
Yeah, I am working on an idea for a play.
I don't think you are actually.
Oh. No,
you're not. Because your mother said drop it, and you obviously, Mom says it, you do it.
I listen to Mother, Jim.
Apparently you do. Speaking of Gail Waters, she's featured. Joni Mitchell is my favorite performer who ever lived.
Really?
Once said at a concert, I actually saw her at Radio City Music Hall decades ago. It was one of the most exciting nights of my life. In any case,
I love
once
Joni.
she said, someone screams out in the audience, sing a case of you or something, and she says to the audience, no one ever asked Van Gogh to paint a Starry Night again, kind of thing, meaning I'm sick of doing that. So when someone mentions to you, I would say arguably your most iconic thing, Company is Coming, which is Gail, does that aggravate you? Because enough already with Company is Coming, or are you okay with that?
Well, the biggest thing that you're known for will also attract the broadest stroke of person. So you will get, like in the airport, it's people that will accost you. And
are you okay with that, or you feel like move on already? I'm sick of talking about this. Be honest.
At 5 a.m., yeah.
Okay, whether you're sick of it or not, we're going to play a piece because it's my favorite thing you do. We're going to play this.
Okay.
This is Company is Coming, where Gail is preparing for Company's Coming, and there's some level of anxiety in Gail in this particular moment. Here's just a little chunk of this.
Gotta clean the house now, people! I want this place looking like Disney on Ice in 1 minute. Terry, if you haven't made your bed, throw it away. It's too late to make it now. Company is coming. Get rid of the couches. We can't let people know we sat. The chairs need to be pushed in. There cannot be any sign of living in this house. I don't care if we have to throw everything out. David, can we get the lesbian plant out here?
The lesbian plant line, my cousins who are lesbians gave my mom an orchid, and I was just riffing. I saw this orchid. You can't. It doesn't make any sense.
So what is your mother thinking? I mean, it doesn't get any better than Gail Waters.
No. She was in the series.
I know she was in the series.
She's a clairvoyant. She knew. I mean, and this was also something that you don't want to be typecast as like, oh, do your one thing, but I don't know.
You don't want to be typecast. I mean, then James Gandolfini. Oh, I don't want people to remember me as Tony Soprano. I want to move on. What are you talking about?
In hindsight, also, you probably only discovered me in 2018. You probably discovered me after, because Gail was not that popular during its run.
I discovered you a little bit before you were with me on TV, where I act like a narc, all suited up. Which was I think I met you in like. You said it. I mean, you have to own it. I mean, you said it, so that's the way it is.
Like an attorney, not like a narc.
No, you said a narc. Doesn't matter. It's too late, actually. It was 4 years ago. Yeah. We're talking to Chris Fleming, who's going to be at the Wilbur before. You played the Wilbur in the past. In fact, you were playing the Wilbur right after. That's a great place. It's not really intimate, which is what I really like, kind of thing.
It's a lot of people, but they're all right in front of you.
Somehow. I know. That's pretty good, right?
It's a shoebox, yeah.
Well, that's kind of the goal, right? To have a lot of people in front of you?
Yeah. Well, Jared, you know what I mean? Like at eye level. It's not a long room. It's a tall room. Yeah.
So, one of the things that is most terrifying to me is, can I say what you said to me is when you were walking over here? You don't want me to say what you said about Mayor Wu.
I'm sure, yeah.
You said to me, is it intimidating at all asking questions of the mayor?
Yeah.
I mean, and I think if we did it once, it probably would be. Well, when she's kind enough to come regularly, the governor is, you used to it and you have a flow kind of thing.
Yeah.
I cannot think, and I mean this sincerely, I've said on the show before, the most terrifying thing to me on the planet is the notion that I, as a standalone human being, would stand up in front of people at the Wilbur Theater and try to make them laugh. And I have these, not just nightmares, but daymares. But I tell them, I do my first story, and they don't laugh.
Yeah.
And you can't, I don't know how you, I'm serious about this, but
you can always pull the fire alarm.
how do you ever recover? I mean, do you have those kind of anxieties, or you just do what you do?
Truthfully, Jim, I mean, this is a grass is always greener situation. Like, this is very, like, you guys are recording right by a latte machine. Like, everything is terrifying here. Like,
Yeah.
and there's a bird flying around.
There is a bird actually flying.
There's flora and fauna. There's people with
lesbian plants everywhere, by the way.
I've seen at least 6 people with cellos on their back walking through. This is a very literate crowd, and that is intimidating to me. There's the space, like I think I just heard someone laugh, but they could just be with friends like far, far away. So this is far scarier. And
so you prefer the uneducated to come to your shows, just like Donald Trump, yes?
Exactly. Bottom of the barrel. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
fine.
yeah. Appalachia. Yeah. I like that. People
That's
from the
really
woods.
nice.
People from the woods.
Yeah.
It's what I like.
I like that. Yeah.
No. I think you would do great if you want. I started when I was very young. I think pursuing stand-up comedy is a. I wouldn't recommend it if you don't have to do it. I do think it's a really.
What's young? What, in all seriousness?
17.
And were you freaked out then, or were you too young to know to be freaked out?
No, I would dry heave a lot, but it was. I dry heave before shows.
Attractive.
It gets me.
So you get nervous
nice.
before a show?
Incredibly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. Through therapy, I've gotten a little bit better at being like, you know what, there's worse things that could happen. But
So I don't mean to belabor this, but can we stay with it just one more second?
Of
then
course,
we'll
no,
move on?
sorry.
So you tell your opening thing. I assume if I were attempting to craft a stand-up deal like you do, I would make sure that my first piece was really good.
Certainly.
Because once, it's sort of like a momentum thing, I would think. If you start good, then it's probably going to stay that way. If you start poorly, you are totally screwed. Is that not your mentality? Can you recover from a horrible opening?
Yes. In fact, I open poorly a lot, and I think it's better to because if you get too good in the beginning,
Low expectation.
then you can disappoint them. So, I think the most important thing is being present when you open up. If you say, you show them that you are here in the now, and then you're together. This is only going to happen this one time. You can do no wrong. But that's the struggle, to stay present.
It is really mathematical, isn't it? I learned that from watching comedians in cars getting coffee with Jerry Seinfeld, how everything, word choice is so specific. Timing is down to the second is so specific. So you know how to fine tune everything almost in a computational way.
I don't get that mathematic with it. I do more chaotic stuff than those guys.
So just throw it all out.
Sometimes.
Is this the longest you've ever been in one place in a conversation about your work? You move a lot when you're doing your shtick.
Shtick is a violent term, but yeah, I don't usually sit still. Yeah.
Well, you are now. That was my point.
Yeah, my organs are shifting.
Yeah, they are. So, do you have anything more you want to say to pitch this? You've done a very poor job of pitching your show I've done a better job of pitching your show than you have. Do you want to say anything to entice people to come not to the first show, which is sold out, but to the second show, which is not sold out? Go, take it away.
I have a custom onesie made by a woman in the Netherlands. That is going to be, yes.
Are you wearing that?
Oh, not
it
right
shows
now.
everything, right? I mean, I assume.
Everything must go.
Everything.
Yeah, you're going to love the way you look. I guarantee
bet.
it.
Well, that's appealing.
And a really nice jacket with my name on the back. And
well, that actually is great.
Yeah, it's nice.
That's pretty good. So
Why
that's
did you
good
have to
enough
go to the
reason.
Netherlands to have a onesie made?
She DM'd me, and I love her. It's called Feast Studios, and I love her faux fur vibe. And I always feel like they're a little bit ahead of the curve.
They are.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's it.
Thanks, Jim. Thank you,
Well,
Jared.
it's really nice to see you. Do you want to apologize for what you said about me when I wasn't here?
Yes.
What do you want to say?
That I was a coward for not saying that to your face. And that you,
You were
but
a
you know
coward.
what? You have two powerful sides to you.
I do.
Both equally wonderful.
Oh,
And I love
that
to
is
see you.
so nice. By the way, next time you're on, I'm going to wear this onesie I just got a couple of weeks ago.
From the Netherlands?
I think it wasn't from the Netherlands,
Okay.
but from the center of Europe.
His
I
was
think
from
you'll like it a lot.
His was from Bill Ricca.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I
Nice
love
to
the
see you,
Bill Rucker
Chris
onesie.
Fleming.
Nice to see you
Big
guys.
fans.
Thank
Chris
you.
Fleming is fabulous. Go see him at the Wilbur Theater, second show Saturday night.
Comedian Chris Fleming, as Jim just said, will be performing at Saturday. The second one is at 9:45 for our hardy people.
No, turn his mic back on. He's going to try to say something and pitch his show for a second. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Say something.
It's at 9:45 p.m.
Okay,
Yeah,
9:45 p.m.
Yeah,
a few tickets available.
Eastern time.
And you get to see the
What
ones
do you do in between? What time's the first show? Don't go away. What time's the first show?
7.
So what? You look ridiculous with the thing on, with the hat and the mic. What do you do in between the shows? What do you do?
I try to get my voice back because I usually lose my voice.
Do you really?
Yeah, within 20 minutes.
How do you get your voice back?
I drink a lot of tea, throat coat.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty good.
And I lie down on the couch.
Okay.
Throat coat.
Yeah.
Okay, you can take your thing off.
Okay.
Great to see you, Chris
Goodbye,
Fleming.
Chris Fleming. Do we hear it for him already? We did hear it for him already. Thank you, Chris Fleming. We're big fans here. Oh, we got to take a break. Sorry.
No, we're not taking
We
a
do
break.
not need to take a break.
Yeah.
Great to see you, Chris.
We're being told things
Big
in our
fans.
ears, so
Thank
we're
you
not going
very
to
much.
take a break.
So we have 2 minutes left. We really don't have time to take calls, which we intended to do because we got consumed with Chris Fleming. You know, that Company is Coming thing, which is one of the funny. If you haven't watched it, by the way.
So funny.
It is one of the funniest videos, maybe ever, featuring
So
Chris
funny. Can I
Fleming.
just say that, I kind of got the call last minute this morning that I was filling in with Margaret because we didn't know if she would be
Till
well
this
enough.
morning,
And
yeah.
I took precious time of research to just sit and watch because with alongside you because it was so hilarious.
It is funny. So how do you feel? Do you go places and are you the company? You know, there was a survey
I have
that we
a role.
read, and I
Yeah.
thought of it only because of the Company is Coming thing, which said people who have guests at their house over the holidays, over Christmas, whatever it is, don't want them staying more than 4 days. My response to how long someone should stay if they come to your house is 0 days. You stayed at somebody's house in
I
California.
did.
How long did you
When
do
I was
that?
out in California, I stayed for 2 nights, and I know I won because I got a text from her yesterday, I think it was, saying, "We had so much fun. You were such a great house guest!" Exclamation point. And I thought that was brilliant because if I had stayed 3 days, no text.
But do you not feel, I don't know how you feel, I don't want to sound as antisocial as I am and how this sounds. Do you not feel invaded, even if it's somebody you're close to, who comes and literally physically stays in your
Well, that's why you
space?
have to be judicious about who comes. Like I have a friend who's coming this week, and I said to her, I'm going to be gone this time and this time. I'm going to leave keys for you. The house is yours. Do whatever you want. I'll see you at certain points, but certain points it's just yours.
You don't find that inhibiting when you're in your own house and you're used to a certain spatial division? You know what I mean? You're okay with that?
No, because I also know the person. I wouldn't. You have to be judicious.
What's the
There are
longest
lots
you'd
of
stay
people.
at somebody else's house? I know you stayed 2 days in LA, but you had to get back to work. What's the longest you'd stay at somebody's house?
During the pandemic, I was supposed to stay a weekend, and I ended up staying about 2.5 weeks.
Really? How'd
Yep.
those people feel about that?
They didn't want me to leave. That was nice too.
That's what
But
they
I was
said.
helping with yard work and
Who
things
was
like
that, if I may ask? Or no?
Well, I'm not going to share their names.
That's fine. Okay. In any case, I'll find out their names at the end of the show, and I'll tell you tomorrow. We are done. We don't know if Marjorie is returning
Hopefully,
tomorrow.
but she
does have
we hope she's
COVID. I
better.
spoke to her this morning, and she sounded a little gravelly, but hopefully she's well enough to do a Zoom. If not, Jared will make a return appearance. Is that correct? Yes or no?
I will.
You were great today, and I know on short notice you were really kind to do this.
It's always fun to be with you. Thank you so much. And
Our
thank
pleasure.
everyone for listening to another edition
And
of Boston.
coming. Thank you all for coming.
Yes.
We appreciate it.
Yes. You can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast. Tune in tomorrow for Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey, outgoing GBH President and CEO John Abbott, NYU medical ethicist Art Kaplan, Washington Post personal finance columnist Michelle Singletary, and tech guru Andy Anatko. Our crew is Zoe Matthews, Aidan Connolly, and Mackenzie Farkas. Additional support provided by Gia Orsino and Fernando Cervantes. Our engineer is John LeClaire Parker. Our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. And special thanks to the BPL team, Angelica Marrero, Steve Barashi, and Evelyn Brito.
Can I just say one thing about John? I don't know if we've ever had John on the air. I think we have once before John Abbott. We had Susan Goldberg before, who's the new CEO and president as of, I think, formally December 15th. Today's the 13th?
It might even
Well,
be
in 2
tomorrow
days,
or
whatever.
Thursday, yeah.
But in advance, I know a lot of you know about John, but you'll have an opportunity to hear from a person I think you'd agree is maybe the most important voice in public media in America over the last 17 years, is it, or some such?
He's been at GBH for 24 years.
24.
The majority of them now as president.
As the boss. Yeah, it's a really interesting discussion. We're thrilled to have him. We're going to miss him, even though Susan appears wonderful, I should say. So that's the deal. So since you just asked me, what am I doing tonight?
What are you doing tonight in
Seth
Greater
Moulton,
Boston?
Congressman Moulton just got back from his second trip. He was there a year ago to Ukraine to survey things on the ground in Kyiv and around Kyiv. He's going to talk about that, going to talk about an act to protect people from Afghanistan who served us while our troops were there and whether we're serving them in return. And I believe we have a couple of restaurateurs. I know one is Tiffany Faison with Tenderonis, who have chosen to open restaurants at the tail end. We hope it's the tail end of the pandemic. And we're going to talk about whether or not, or how wise a move that was. It's all tonight at 7 o'clock on Greater Boston. I'm Jim Browdy.
I'm Jared Bowen.
Thanks for listening. Hopefully Marge will be back tomorrow. And thank you for being here. Hope you join us again tomorrow. Be well.